Chapter 417. Chu Luiwei turned to Yin Gu and said, "Thank you, Second Master Yin. I'll definitely thank you personally when I see you in the future." Yin Gu chuckled. "Then, if there's nothing else, I'll take my leave first. I won't disturb Prince Li and Miss Lu Yu." With that, he quickly left. Chu Luiwei blinked. Why did she feel that Yin Ji's footsteps were a little hurried, as if he couldn't wait to leave? Rong Xiu glanced at Yu Mo indifferently. Yu Mo immediately straightened his back and rode the horse forward again. Rong Xiu then put down the curtain and nonchalantly said, "I'm sorry. So the person you met in the Imperial Mausoleum is the head of Zhen Bao Pavilion." Chu Luiwei retracted her gaze. "Your Highness, do you know this person?" Rong Xiu's lips curved slightly. "Not really. I've only heard some rumors." Chu Luiwei looked at him meaningfully, but he looked indifferent. She couldn't tell anything from the beginning. Maybe she was overthinking? "This person has helped me several times. It was also because of his help today that I was able to get out successfully. But how did your Highness find this place?" Rong Xiu paused for a moment, but he quickly returned to normal. "Shui knows you're here." Chu Luiwei nodded in understanding. The five senses of a magical beast had always been very sharp. Shui had always liked to be with her and was familiar with her scent. It was normal for her to find this place. "I haven't seen Shui for a long time. Why did Mu Qinghe bring you here?" Rong Xiu asked. Chu Luiwei pondered for a moment and shook her head. "It seems like he's looking for something." In fact, she really didn't know what Mu Qinghe was planning to do. He was most likely going for the pyramid, but what exactly was that? What was the use of him coming here? The strangest thing was, why did he bring her along for such an important and secretive matter? Chu Luiwei only felt that there was a thick fog in front of him. Rong Xiu said, "We've caused quite a commotion this time. Imperial Father will probably step up the search. The fewer people who know that you and Mu Qinghe have been here, the better." Chu Luiwei came back to his senses and nodded. After Emperor joined and the rest walked out of the Imperial Mausoleum's passageway, Elder Yi immediately sent a message. Zhongqi and the others who had been waiting bitterly at the top of the mountain immediately rushed over when they saw the signal. When they saw the few people standing behind Emperor Jiawen and Elder Yi, Zhongqi and the others were shocked. When did these people barge into Golden Inheritance Peak? He didn't know the other two people, but he would never mistake Crown Prince Rongjin for someone else. However, the Crown Prince, who had always been high-spirited, was now in a very sorry state. The young woman and the old man beside him didn't look any better. Mr. Yi asked, "During this period of time, did anyone else come out of the Imperial Mausoleum other than us?" Zhongqi immediately bowed. "I've sent more people to guard Golden Inheritance Peak, but I didn't see any traces of anyone." Emperor Jiawen's face was pale because of the poison, but it was also a little green because of his anger. "From now on, keep a close watch. Once you find anything amiss, immediately report to me." He didn't believe that the two of them could really stay inside forever. Zhongqi and the rest didn't dare to ask why Rongjin and the rest would appear here, so they could only agree. Elder Yi, who was at the side, turned around to take a look and waved the fan in his hands. The people inside have extraordinary means, so it's easy for them to leave this place silently. However, Emperor Jiawen is still angry, so there's no need to say this. Perhaps the person inside had already left. Who knows? Elder Yi smiled helplessly and shook his head. "Even though I didn't see them, a strong warrior of that level. Country Yaochen really can't afford to offend them. I don't know how Sidu Xingqian and the rest offended them, but the exit didn't close earlier or later. It just had to close when they were about to escape, trapping them inside. They clearly did it on purpose." His gaze swept across Situ Xingqian and the rest. It's going to be interesting this time." Almost overnight, the situation in the imperial capital had changed. First, the empress passed away. Then, Rongjin was disrespectful to the ancestors and was stripped of his position as the crown prince. These two things happened consecutively, and everyone was caught off guard. For a moment, all sorts of guesses were made. Some people said that the Empress and His Majesty had been very loving all these years, and her health had always been very good. It was really strange that she suddenly passed away. Rongjin had been the crown prince for so many years, and His Majesty had always thought highly of him. Even when he made a mistake and was scolded in public, His Majesty didn't strip him of his position as the crown prince. However, right after the empress died, Rongjin was stripped of his position. How could people not be suspicious? Some people also said that the empress was in charge of the harem and looked very harmonious, but quite a few concubines and princes had died in her hands. His Majesty couldn't take it anymore, so he finally killed her. Rongjin was implicated, and His Majesty hated him. In the end, he was scolded. However, the most ferocious rumor was that the third prince, Rongjio, had something to do with the empress's death. As his birth mother, noble Lady Ying, was harmed by the empress back then, Rongjio had long hated the empress and waited for an opportunity to kill her. As for Rongjin, in the past few months, he had been scolded by His Majesty and was even put under house arrest. His position as the crown prince only existed in name, and it was only a matter of time before he was stripped of his position. Even though the higher-ups strictly ordered everyone not to talk about this matter and used all sorts of methods to suppress these rumors, country Xing Luo's Emperor Xian Kong, Sita Yan's arrival made the entire matter even more confusing. In the darkness, there seemed to be an invisible hand that easily controlled everything and made the waves even more turbulent. Palace. In the palace, Situ Yin and Emperor Jiawen were facing each other. Situ Yan's expression was cold. I'll say it again. Hand over Xingqian and Lian Ning and cancel her marriage agreement with Rongjin. If not, country Xing Luo won't let this matter rest. Emperor Jiawen seemed to have heard the funniest joke in the world. Ha ha, Situ Yin, you really have the cheek to say this? You and that precious daughter of yours. Do you still need me to say what kind of good things you did in private? From start to end, you've always had ulterior motives. Now that the matter has been exposed, you still dare to openly come and ask for them. No wonder Situ Yin kept mentioning the marriage alliance since a long time ago. No wonder he doesn't care about the others and only values Rongjin. Previously, I naively thought that Situ Yin came for Rongjin's position as the crown prince. Now that I think about it, why would he, as country Xing Luo's emperor, want this? At that time, he was really blinded by Lard. When Situ Yin received the news, he already knew that the matter had been completely exposed. Thus, he didn't care at all when he heard Emperor Jiawen say this. I came here just to bring Situ Xingqian away. To think that I painstakingly planned for so long, but I didn't expect Rongjin to be a fake heaven's chosen son. I don't even know who I'm supposed to vent my anger and resentment on. Does this mean that you're not willing to hand her over? Emperor Jiawen sneered. Hand her over? The two of them are a match made in heaven. Of course, I have to fulfill their wish. Once the Empress's 1-month mourning period is over, I'll let them get married. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 418. Situ Yin widened his eyes in shock. Rong Xiao, are you crazy? The Empress is the mother of the country, and they have to hold a national funeral after she passes away. As her son, Rongjin should be filial for 3 years. Even if there's an emergency, it should be at least a year. A month? Isn't that equivalent to holding a wedding while stepping on the Empress's coffin? Do you still want your face? Do you still want your reputation? If you really do this, not only will Rongjin and Situ Xingqian be labeled as traitors, but even the entire country, Yao Qin's royal family's reputation will be affected. Even if you don't want your face, I still want it. Since he already knew that Rongjin wasn't the real heaven's chosen son, why would he agree to continue with the marriage agreement? Situ Xingqian was the apple of his eye, and she was the daughter that he doted on the most. How could she marry a useless crown prince like Rongjin? Wouldn't her entire life be over? Seeing Situ Yan's exasperated look, Emperor Jiawen felt good. This old thing kept scheming, but he shot himself in the foot in the end. I have to get back at him no matter what. You were the one who suggested this marriage. Are you going to break it now? Situ Yin was so angry that his liver hurt. So what if I break it? If we break the marriage agreement right after Rongjin got into trouble, people will definitely criticize us. Even so, it's better than Situ Xingqian's entire life. Emperor Jiawen leaned against the chair. The things that had happened during this period of time had exhausted him. But now that he saw Situ Yin being angered to such an extent, his mood finally eased a little. There's no room for discussion. The marriage agreement will continue. Situ Xingqian will get married in the Imperial city a month later. Don't worry, Rongjin is my son after all. I'll definitely let my subordinates handle this wedding grandly. Situ Yan's vision turned black, and he almost fainted. Rongxiao, you. He had made up his mind to keep Situ Xingqian here until the wedding with Rongjin was over. Rongxiao, don't go overboard. Don't think that Xing Luo is afraid of you. Situ Yin took a deep breath to calm himself down. With a gloomy expression, he said, Elder Zhong Yi is still in the Star Luo Empire. If he finds out that you did this, who are you threatening? Mockery appeared on Emperor Jiawen's face. Elder Zhong Yi is very powerful, but do you think that it'll be enough just because he's here? Don't forget, Elder Zhong Yi represents Mingyue Tianshan. Situ Yan's eyes were red. If you can invite the people from Mingyue Tianshan, can't we? Situ Yan was stunned. Only then did he remember that Rongxiao had also stayed at Mingyue Tianshan for many years. Even though outsiders thought that Rongxiao was just a sickly person, he had heard Situ Xingqian mention before that Rongxiao wasn't like what the rumors said. The most important thing was that Rongxiao had stayed in Mingyue Tianshan for so long. If he was willing, he would naturally be able to get a backer. He might even be more powerful than Elder Zhongyi. Using this as a threat was completely ineffective. The veins on Situ Yan's forehead popped up. He had never been humiliated like this before. Rongxiao, do you really want the two countries to go to war? Said Situ Yan in a low voice. Emperor Jiawen looked up, crossed his arms in front of him, and smiled. Situ Yan, do you dare? Your Highness, here's your tea. Come in. Creak. The door was pushed open, and a page boy in gray walked in with a cup of tea. He then carefully placed the tea at the side. Rongjio was wiping his knife. He was very focused, and he was very serious about every step. This knife was actually just a normal knife, but he had always treasured it. This was because he used this knife when he killed someone on the battlefield for the first time. That was the first time he personally chopped off someone's head. When the knife landed, it could instantly take the other party's life. The sticky and fishy blood splattered all over his face. Many people would have different reactions after killing someone for the first time. Some would vomit, and some would have nightmares. But he didn't. On the contrary, he only felt satisfied. So many years had passed, but this knife was still bright and sharp. Your Highness, this tea won't taste good when it's cold, reminded the page boy respectfully. Rongjio paused in his actions and glanced at him. Please enjoy. I'll take my leave first. After he finished speaking, the servant silently left and closed the door. Rongjio's gaze landed on the cup of tea. He put the knife in his hand to the side, picked up the tea, got up, walked to a bonsai, and poured the tea into it. Then, he felt for the bottom of the teacup and gently clicked it. Kacha! An extremely thin layer popped open, and a piece of paper fell out. It turned out that there was an extremely small mechanism hidden at the bottom of the teacup. Even though the piece of paper was very small, the words on it were very clear. Everything is ready. Rongjio made up his mind. He moved his fingers, and the piece of paper was crushed into powder. He gently raised it, and it disappeared with the wind. Chuning was so busy these few days that he didn't even go home. Chu Liwei also didn't return to the academy and stayed at home alone. After the news of the Empress's death and the Crown Prince's dethronement spread, she vaguely had a premonition. Situ Yan's arrival also confirmed her guess. Emperor Jiawen already knew that Rongjin and Situ Xingqian secretly followed him into the Imperial Mausoleum that day. This matter was the last straw that broke the camel's back, and it finally made Emperor Jiawen decide to take action. The Xi family seemed to be implicated as well. Quite a few people were removed from their positions, and some were even sent to jail. Anyone with eyes could tell that this definitely had something to do with the Empress. The C family didn't resist at all, as they silently accepted everything and kept a low profile. Their position as the leader of the four major families was on the verge of collapse. However, this wasn't what Chu Luiwe was most concerned about. She just felt that something was very strange. Since Emperor Zhao knew that Rong Jin and Situ Xingqian went to the Imperial Mausoleum that day, he would definitely follow this clue and find something. The Empress's death was most likely related to Situ Xingqian, but until now, there wasn't any news. On the other hand, the third prince, Rong Jiao, was splashed with dirty water for no reason, and the rumors became more and more intense. Almost everyone believed that he was the one who was most deeply involved in this matter. Emperor Zhaoan wasn't dumb. If he really wanted to investigate, he could definitely find something. But now he was actually allowing this matter to develop. I heard that Rongjio is also under house arrest. Chu Luiwe felt that something was amiss no matter how she thought about it. Also, that pyramid. Even though it's on me, I still don't know what it is. No matter how she thought about it, she didn't have a clue. In the end, Chu Luiwe decided to make a trip to Heptagon Alley personally. The Empress must know something. Now that she's already dead, Situ Xingqian and Rong Jin can't ask her, so I might as well check it out myself. But when she reached Heptagon Alley, she saw a floor full of corpses. Those were the Imperial guards guarding this place. Chu Luiwe's heart sank as she immediately pushed open the door and entered. The blood-colored bronze cauldron that was previously placed in the middle of the yard had actually disappeared. Digression. I'm going out in the afternoon, so I'll update later for the rest of the day. Let's all watch it together at night. Mobile users, please browse and read. Chapter 419. The corpse that she saw previously was still hanging in midair, but there was nothing below it. There were traces of a fight in the yard and a few Imperial Guards corpses. The barrier around Heptagon Alley had also been broken. It was obvious that someone had forcefully broken in. Chu Luiwe immediately searched the yard, but she didn't find any useful clues. The only thing she could be sure of was that these people had died less than a day ago. No matter if it was outside or inside, these dead Imperial Guards didn't have many wounds on their bodies. All of them had their necks slit, and they were killed in one hit. This was clearly a one-sided massacre. Chu Luiwe carefully checked their corpses and gradually knitted her brows. It seemed like the Imperial Guards didn't even have time to retaliate. Even though these people weren't the best, they were all well-trained. To be able to kill so many people at the same time and not even give them a chance to spread the news, it was either that the other party had a lot of people or they were very strong. Chu Luiwe was more inclined to the latter. The Imperial City had been heavily guarded recently. If so many people really came, the commotion from both parties' fight would have spread out long ago. It wouldn't be like now, where there were corpses everywhere, but nobody knew about it. If she didn't coincidentally rush over today, she didn't know when this situation would have been discovered. Chu Luiwe thought for a moment and went straight to the palace. The palace was heavily guarded, but thankfully, Chu Luiwe and Rong Xiao had a marriage agreement. As Prince Li's future princess consort, the palace maids naturally let her in. Chu Luiwe didn't go to find Emperor Zhaoan. Instead, she went straight to the Empress's bedroom. On the way, she acutely felt that the atmosphere in the palace was very stiff and strange. Everyone had become very careful. It was obvious that the Empress and Rong Jin's matter made them jittery. Halfway there, Chu Luiwe bumped into a group of people. The person in front was Chu Ning. After not seeing him for a few days, he looked much more haggard and tired. It was obvious that he had been very worried during this period. "Father." Chu Luiwe quickly stepped forward. Hearing this familiar voice, Chu Ning immediately looked up and saw Chu Luiwe. His eyes flashed with surprise, but then he frowned. Why are you here?" Chu Luiwe walked up to him. "Father, I have something important to tell you." Chu Ning looked at her expression and suddenly felt a sense of unease in his heart. You had always been very sensible. If it was not an urgent matter, she would absolutely not run to the palace to look for him at this time. He whispered a few words to the people behind him, then led Chu Luiwe to the side. "What happened?" Chu Luiwe pursed her lips. "Father, the Imperial Guards in charge of guarding Heptagon Alley have all been killed." As for the bronze cauldron in the Heptagon Alley, it has already been stolen, and its whereabouts are unknown. What? Chu Ning's face was filled with shock. He expected that something bad must have happened, but he didn't expect that. When did this happen? Chu Luiwei briefly explained the matter. Chu Ning's expression became more and more unsightly. In other words, we still don't know who did it? And there are no clues at all? Chu Luiwei gently nodded. I know that His Majesty places great importance on the Heptagon Alley, and it just so happens that you have been in charge of it recently. So I immediately rushed over after the incident. Chu Ning's face seemed to have condensed a layer of frost. These few days, he had been busy in the palace dealing with the Empress's matters, so he temporarily put the Heptagon Alley matter aside and handed it over to his subordinates to handle. But he didn't expect that such a thing would happen. Even if His Majesty ordered him to stay in the palace and solve the problem here first, he couldn't absolve himself from the blame. All right, I understand. I will report to His Majesty now. Chu Ning quickly made a decision. His Majesty would find out about this matter sooner or later. Even if he would be punished, he had to take the initiative to face it. You go back first. Chu Luiwei shook her head. I'll go with you, father. I'm the first person to discover this matter, so there is no reason for me not to go. Chu Ning was a little hesitant. This matter involved a lot of things, and I don't want you to be dragged into it. According to his investigations these few days, he had already faintly felt that the Empress should have played a big game when she was alive. Although she was now dead, the matter was far from over. Especially now, the bronze cauldron in the Heptagon Alley had mysteriously disappeared. No matter how he looked at it, he hoped that you could stay out of this matter. Chu Luiwei's lips curved. From the moment I went to the Heptagon Alley, it was already difficult for me to get away easily. But father, don't worry, I know what to do. I know what to do and what not to do. Chu Ning looked at her with a deep gaze. How could he not know that this was actually her excuse? The real reason was, if she could appear to a large extent, His Majesty's punishment would be reduced to a large extent. Chu Ning felt a wave of warmth and finally nodded. All right, come with me to see His Majesty. Chu Luiwei walked beside Chu Ning, and the Imperial guards behind them were very perceptive and kept a distance for the two of them. Originally, Chu Luiwei wanted to ask about the Empress's situation, but after thinking about it, he suppressed the words. After walking for about 15 minutes, the group finally arrived at Zhaoyang Hall. The strange thing was that it was currently daytime, but the door of Zhaoyang Hall was tightly shut. The number of Imperial guards outside the hall was also twice as compared to usual, and they looked like they were ready to fight. Chu Ning stopped in his tracks. Eunuch Min, who was guarding outside the hall, saw Chu Ning and knew that he had come to report to His Majesty. But then, he saw Chu Luiwei standing beside Chu Ning. Eunuch Min's heart skipped a beat. Why is she here at this time? He hurriedly walked over with small steps. Lord Chu Ning, His Majesty is dealing with important matters at this time. Please wait a moment. After that, he looked at Chu Luiwei. Miss Lu Luiwei, why are you here today? Chu Luiwei concisely said, My Majesty has something to tell His Majesty. I have something important to report to His Majesty with my father. Eunuch Min, you don't have to worry. We'll just wait here. Eunuch Min was a shrewd person. When he saw Chu Luiwei and Chu Ning's expressions, he felt that something was amiss. Hence, he didn't ask in detail and left after saying a few words. But the moment he walked back, the door was suddenly opened from the inside. Bang! A middle-aged man in a black brocade robe walked out from within. His face was very gloomy, and he exuded an imposing aura that prevented strangers from getting close. When Eunuch Min saw him, he immediately respectfully took a step back. However, that man didn't care about him at all and just walked out with big strides. Looking at that face, Chu Luiwei slightly narrowed her eyes. This face looks a little familiar. Suddenly, her eyes lit up. This man is 50% similar to Situ Xingchen. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 420. This person must be Country Xing Luo's Xiankong Emperor, Situ Yin. It seems like he didn't have a good conversation with Emperor Jiawen, and he's probably at a disadvantage. If not, he definitely wouldn't show such an expression in front of so many people. He's an emperor, after all. If he didn't encounter something unbearable, he wouldn't have such a reaction. Chu Luiyue was a little curious. I don't know what Emperor Jiawen said or did to make Situ Yin so angry. Situ Yin walked past them. Suddenly, Situ Yin paused in his footsteps and turned to look at Chu Luiyue. You're Chu Luiyue? Chu Luiyue's eyes sparkled. That's weird. This person actually knows me? She lowered her head and curtsied. Situ Yan's gaze was like a sharp knife that scraped across Chu Luiyue's body. Chu Luiyue's heart skipped a beat. It seems like Situ Yin doesn't have a good impression of me. Chu Ning stepped forward and silently blocked in front of Chu Luiyue, blocking Situ Yan's vision. Situ Yin grunted and turned to leave. When his figure gradually disappeared, Chu Ning turned around and asked worriedly, Chu Luiyue, when did you offend this person? Chu Luiyue chuckled and shrugged. It's my first time seeing him today. How could I have the chance to offend him? But I did offend his precious daughter. Situ Xingqian? Chu Ning nodded in understanding. Chu Luiyue looked at his relieved expression and asked curiously, Aren't you worried? What's there to worry about? What's there to worry about? Chu Ning snorted. How can his daughter be compared to my Yuer? He vaguely knew that Situ Xingqian seemed to be interested in Rong Xiu, but Rong Xiu married Yuer? Wasn't it obvious why Situ Xingqian treated his Yuer that way? In Chu Ning's eyes, all the women in the world added together weren't as good as his precious Yuer. Other things aside, Rong Xiu had excellent foresight. Chu Luiyue was speechless. Why did she hear a trace of pride in his words? Chu Ning is here. Let him in. Emperor Jiawen's voice came from Zhaoyang Palace. Eunuch Min hurriedly said, Your Majesty, Miss Lu Yu is also here. She said that she has something important to report. There was a moment of silence. Then let her come in with us. Chu Ning and Chu Luiyue looked at each other, their expressions turning solemn as they entered Zhaoyang Hall one after another. Upon entering the palace, Chu Luiyue immediately saw Emperor Jiawen, who was sitting at the head of the table. The expression on his face seemed to be better than a few days ago. It was obvious that he had vented his anger at Situ Yin. Lu Yu, you don't come to the palace often. What brings you here today? His tone was relaxed, and it was obvious that he didn't care much about Chu Luiyue's arrival. Chu Luiyue and Chu Ning exchanged glances before they stepped forward. Your Majesty, Lu Yu came here today because of Heptagon Alley. Upon hearing the words Heptagon Alley, Emperor Jiawen's expression froze, and he unwittingly sat up straight as he stared at Chu Luiyue. What did you say? Chu Luiyue paused for a moment before she told him everything. However, she changed her reason for going to Heptagon Alley to that she happened to pass by there. She didn't want Emperor Jiawen to know that she was secretly investigating this matter. Emperor Jiawen was stunned when he heard the first sentence. He spent a lot of effort to suppress his urge to flip the table and stand up, but the veins on his hands, which were grabbing onto the chair, were popping up. His face was green and white, and it was very interesting. Chu Luiyue had long expected his reaction, so she pretended that she didn't notice it and calmly told him what happened. As this is a serious matter, Lu Yu didn't dare to act on his own, so he immediately rushed over. Chu Ning immediately knelt down and asked for forgiveness. It's all my fault for causing this situation. Please punish me, Your Majesty. Emperor Jiawen slowly held his forehead and didn't say anything for a long time. Chu Ning and Chu Luiyue waited quietly. Actually, Emperor Jiawen's emotions were very complicated at this point, and his mind was in a mess. He originally thought that the truth of this matter would gradually be revealed after the Empress died and Rong Jin was removed from his position. But now, something like this actually happened. His first reaction was to suspect Situ Xingqian. After all, he had basically confirmed that Situ Xingqian secretly met the Empress and learned quite a lot from her. She even obtained the key that the Empress secretly engraved when she was alive, which allowed Rong Jin to successfully enter Golden Inheritance Peak. She was very ambitious, so it wasn't strange for her to do such a thing. But the key point was that Situ Xingqian was currently trapped somewhere. This clearly meant that she didn't steal the bronze cauldron. As for Situ Yin, it didn't seem very likely either. This time, As the matter was urgent, Situ Yin rushed over at the fastest speed and only brought a few personal guards with him. The other party is very strong, and they clearly came prepared. This matter can't be entirely blamed on you. Emperor Joan suppressed the ripples in his heart with much difficulty as he slowly spoke. Immediately bring someone to Heptagon Alley and check if you can find any clues. Once you're done, report to me immediately. Yes. As for Luyu, since you're the first to see it, I'm afraid I'll have to trouble you to make this trip as well. Chu Luiyue said, Your Majesty, don't worry. Don't worry, Your Majesty. I'll do my best. Emperor Zhao nodded and suddenly asked, Oh, right. This won't take up too much of your time and energy, right? On Vice Admiral Mu's side, you have to prioritize him for everything, okay? Chu Luiyue agreed, but he chuckled in his heart. Even if we're already in a mess, we still don't dare to easily offend Mu Qinghe. If Emperor Zhao knew that the two people who entered the Imperial Mausoleum were actually me and Mu Qinghe, I wonder what his expression would be. I'm a little tired. You guys can leave first. Emperor Zhao waved his hands, and Chu Ning brought Chu Luiyue out. After walking out of Zhaoyang Palace, Chu Luiyue suddenly asked, Why? Father, can I go to the Empress's bedroom to take a look? Chu Ning was taken aback. Why are you going there? Chu Luiyue pondered for a moment and smiled. I might be able to help you find some useful clues. However, Chu Ning shook his head solemnly. The Empress's funeral is tomorrow. It's not appropriate for you to go now. He still wanted to cleanly separate Chu Luiyue from this matter. Seeing his determined attitude, Chu Luiyue didn't continue and changed the topic. The group of people left the palace together and went straight to Heptagon Alley, Princely Mansion. Master, a portion of the Northwest Army has already gone to the Imperial City, said Umo softly said. They'll reach here in at most 3 days. Look, Rongxiu looked nonchalant as he flipped a page of his book. How many people are coming? Not many, just 5,000. However, almost all of them are the Northwest Army's elites, and they've killed their way out of the battlefield. They can fight against 10 people each. Even though there are more Imperial guards in the Imperial City, the outcome is still uncertain if the two sides really fight. Besides, there are reinforcements behind. Rongxiu's lips curved up slightly. Rongxiu won't fight an unprepared battle. Besides, I want him to win. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 4:21. Mu Qinghe and Jian Fengxi also returned to the imperial capital together without attracting anyone's attention. As soon as he returned, Mu Qinghe shrank himself in the room. Jian Fengxi originally wanted to take a look at his injuries, but he was refused entry. His temper was not good to begin with, and seeing Jian Fengxi like this, his patience was exhausted. He was too lazy to care and went to do his own things. Mu Qinghe stayed in the room and simply treated his wounds alone. There was no expression on his face, and he looked like a piece of wood. However, in his mind, everything that happened in the Imperial Mausoleum was constantly replaying, especially that illusion. Even if he knew that everything was just an illusion, every time he thought about it, his heart would still stir. Especially when he was alone and quiet. All kinds of images seemed to flash before his eyes, and his ears were filled with noise. Mu Qinghe closed his eyes in annoyance, but found that that person's face was becoming clearer and clearer. She still had a smile on her face. Qinghe, why did you call this consort? Her voice was clear and gentle, and every word entered his ears. Mu Qinghe's heart seemed to be poked by something, and it was extremely sour. But soon, the smile on her face disappeared, and it was replaced by shock and disbelief. Qinghe, you betrayed this consort? The bright starlight in her eyes gradually dissipated, and endless disappointment and sorrow surged. Mu Qinghe suddenly opened his eyes. In a short time, he was actually covered in cold sweat. The sweat and blood mixed together, and it was painful. He stood up, planning to clean himself up first. However, just as he took a step, his expression suddenly changed, and he stopped. A bronze mirror flew out from his body. He was blocking his way out. An endless sea of blood surged. A terrifying aura came, covering the sky and earth. Mu Qinghe's body swayed, and he knelt on the ground. An intense bone-piercing pain came from his heart. He grabbed the clothes in front of his chest tightly, desperately pressing down, but it could not alleviate the pain even a little. "Where is it?" A cold and majestic voice came from within. Mu Qinghe clenched his teeth, sweat dripping from his forehead, and his lips trembling pale. This subordinate is incompetent, unable to snatch the thing. Trash. The pain that was several times more intense instantly swept through his entire body. Mu Qinghe finally could not help but groan, and he spat out a mouthful of blood and fell to the ground. This time, he could not even speak a complete sentence. "But you can't even do one thing that I asked you to do. Mu Qinghe, when did your abilities deteriorate so much? Or did you do it on purpose?" This subordinate did not. Mu Qinghe's body trembled as he spat out these words with much difficulty. Just with this sentence alone, he had used up all his remaining strength. "You've been outside for long enough. If you don't come back soon, you'll definitely arouse suspicion. So, you must return as possible." Even though Mu Qinghe was in extreme pain, he still heard this sentence clearly. But that thing, since you don't have the ability to snatch it, staying here is just a waste of time. You don't have to care about this anymore. Mu Qinghe's lips trembled. No, he had fought so hard to get this opportunity. How could he just let it go like this? This subordinate knows that it was snatched away by a mysterious person. What mysterious person? Mu Qinghe's words had obviously attracted the other party's attention. That person, this subordinate, did not see that person's appearance, but if I see him again, I will definitely recognize him. His aura. Mu Qinghe stammered out a sentence. Please let this subordinate continue. This subordinate will not let you down." At the end, Mu Qinghe was so weak that even his voice could not be heard clearly. But these words were obviously useful. "In that case, I will give you a few more days. If there is no progress, you know the consequences." With that, the bronze mirror quickly disappeared. In the room, only Mu Qinghe was left. He was lying on the ground. His clothes were soaked, and he looked extremely embarrassed. A green shadow appeared beside him. It was Hong Yao. It moved to Mu Qinghe's side and rubbed against his face before burying its head in his chest again. It had always been arrogant and noisy, wanting to disturb the world. But at this time, it was unusually quiet, quietly accompanying Mu Qinghe. "I'm fine," Mu Qinghe whispered. Hong Yao's wings moved. It looked up at him, wanted to say something, but stopped. But in the end, it said nothing. Chu Luiwei returned to Heptagon Alley with Chu Ning, but this time, they still did not find anything. When it was over, it was already late, so Chu Ning asked her to go home. Chu Luiwei knew that he had to go back and continue the investigation, but it was really inappropriate for her to follow him, so she did not insist. The night was dark, and the bright moon hung high in the sky. Chu Luiwei sat cross-legged in her room, absorbing the heaven and earth force around her. After breaking through to rank 3 in the Imperial Mausoleum, her strength had obviously improved a lot. But because the advancement was too sudden, she was worried that it would cause her foundation to be unstable, so she focused on cultivating again. Sensing that the aura in her body had stabilized, Chu Luiwei could not help but look at her palm. After the upgrade of the Yuan Meridian, the speed at which she absorbed the heaven and earth force had obviously increased. This would obviously be of great benefit to her future cultivation. What she lacked the most now was time. It turned out that she wanted to wait until she had recovered enough strength before going to the Tianling dynasty to seek revenge on those people. But she did not expect that she would go as a rank 3 warrior. With her level and strength, there would be a lot of trouble when she went there. Suddenly, there was a fluctuation in her Dantian. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from the Love Network. Chapter 422. Chu Luiwei was stunned. Only then did she realize that the fluctuation was actually emitted from the Black Pyramid. A vast and warm power instantly spread towards Chu Luiwei's limbs and bones. Chu Luiwei was shocked. For some reason, the aura contained in this power was very familiar. Chu Luiwe held her breath and focused her mind. She realized that the seal was not broken. After that, she carefully sensed it and finally confirmed that this power did not come from the pyramid, but from the black seal that covered the pyramid. Chu Luiwe was stunned. She had only seen seals that were used to confine power, but she had never seen one that emitted power. Moreover, this power was pure and rich. It was almost rare in the world. Even if she had the Tianjing Yuan Meridian in her previous life, she might not be able to refine such pure and warm power. But now, this power was gradually seeping into her body. Chu Luiwe was stunned for a while before she finally regained her senses. The seal on the pyramid was actually helping her to nourish her body and improve her cultivation. After thinking this through, even Chu Luiwe was filled with shock. What was going on? Didn't the first master forcibly leave this seal on the pyramid because he didn't want her to touch it? But now, what about the power that was overflowing from it? Suddenly, a figure flashed across her mind. It was the back of a man in a black brocade robe. Although it was blurry, it was still tall, slender, and straight. Chu Luiwe's heart suddenly skipped a beat. She had seen this man's back before. It was clearly the man who had stood in the octagonal pavilion on the cliff in the Imperial mausoleum in the illusion. But this time, he was not standing there. Instead, it seemed like he was standing beside a lake. The scene flashed so quickly that Chu Luiwe did not have time to see it clearly before it disappeared. Chu Luiwe seriously tried to recall it, but she was disappointed to find that she could not remember anything. However, that sense of familiarity was becoming stronger and stronger. Chu Luiwe opened his eyes, his heart beating wildly. She finally couldn't hold it in any longer. She stood up, walked to the window, and pushed it open in frustration. The night breeze blew, instantly waking her up. Now, she was more and more suspicious that it was not an illusion at all. Otherwise, she definitely wouldn't have such a subtle feeling. Could it be that the man in the black robe was the owner of the precious treasure pavilion? Chu Luiwe frowned. If that was the case, then, why didn't she have any impression of this person? She tucked her hair behind her ears, and a trace of seriousness appeared between her brows. Something doesn't seem right. Whoosh. Suddenly, a strange voice came from afar. Chu Luiwe immediately looked up. In the darkness of the night, a black figure appeared in the courtyard. The moonlight elongated that person's shadow, but Chu Luiwe couldn't see that person's appearance under the heavy shadows. Then, a terrifying aura enveloped the entire courtyard. Chu Luiwe was instantly on guard. Her muscles tensed up. This person was extremely dangerous. The surrounding space seemed to be frozen, and all sound was annihilated. The silence was chilling. Suddenly, that person stretched out his hand and beckoned with his index finger. Chu Luiwe's heart skipped a beat. It was a severely burned hand. Even though only half of the palm was exposed, Chu Luiwe could clearly see the shocking scars on it under the moonlight. In the next moment, that person's figure instantly rose into the air and flew into the distance. Did he want her to follow? Chu Luiwe's hand slowly clenched into a fist. She wasn't sure if this was some kind of invitation or provocation. But no matter what, that person clearly knew her identity, and he came with a purpose. Just as that person's figure was about to disappear, Chu Luiwe saw that person suddenly turn around. This time, that person stretched out his hand again and made a gesture. Chu Luiwe's eyes suddenly widened, because that gesture was a secret code that only the 13 Yu guards knew. Palace, Blessing Palace. This was Rong Jin's residence in the palace. After he turned 20, he moved to Crown Prince Mansion outside the palace and rarely came back here. Because of this, Blessing Palace was more deserted than other places, and not many people came here. But at this point, almost nobody knew that the deposed crown prince, Rong Jin, was locked up here. Situ Xingchen was also locked up here with him. It was already nighttime, and Blessing Palace was pitch black. It looked as deserted as usual. However, there were a few hidden auras in the dark, indicating that this place wasn't as peaceful as it looked on the surface. A figure quietly entered the hall. He entered the side hall, walked to the front of the bookshelf, and raised his hand to turn an inkstone on the shelf. Ka! The sound of gears moving could be heard. Under the bookshelf, the smooth and heavy jade board slowly moved aside. A narrow entrance appeared in front of them. With the moonlight, they could vaguely see that there was a staircase inside. That person walked down without hesitation. After his figure disappeared, the jade board closed again. The entire room was silent, as if nothing had happened. Chu Yue's heart was in turmoil. The 13 Yu guards were her personal guards, and she personally created them back then. Every single one of the 13 guards was personally selected and trained by her. Unlike Mu Qinghe, who controlled the military, the 13 Yu guards had no connections with any forces in the Imperial court. They were more like her secret knife. Wherever she pointed, they would cut through all the thorns for her. The most important thing was that she was their only direct master. At any time, at any place, under any circumstances, they would only listen to her orders. Even her father had no right to interfere. When she was in a desperate situation back then, the 13 Yu guards weren't by her side. All the signals she sent for help were also ignored. Until her death, she didn't see any of them again. After meeting Mu Qinghe, she had a guess in her heart. Did the 13 Yu guards betray her back then? She didn't dare to think about it. Every time she thought of this, she would automatically skip it, as if she was actively avoiding something. Therefore, only God knew how shocked she was when she saw that familiar hand gesture. Chu Yue's entire body seemed to be frozen. All the blood in her body stopped flowing, and only her heart was beating wildly. Thump, 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 thump. Countless guesses flashed through her mind at lightning speed. However, just as she opened her mouth and was about to ask the person, that person suddenly turned and left. Chu Yue gritted her teeth and jumped out of the window. She followed that person. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 423. Creak. The sound of the door opening was heard in the dark and cramped space. Situ Xingqian, who was trapped in the metal cage, suddenly looked up. Her exquisite hair bun was already untied, and a few strands of hair hung down messily. She looked very down and out. The dirty marks on her face and body made her look even more disheveled. I've lived for so many years, but I've never been in such a situation. The footsteps gradually got closer. A man walked in and stood 3 steps away from the metal cage. In the entire space, only the 2 candles on the mottled walls were shining weakly. Situ Xingqian couldn't see the person's face clearly, but she immediately recognized him when she saw his figure. It's Emperor Jiawen. She almost immediately stood up, rushed over, grabbed the metal bars, and harshly shook them. Let me out! Let me out! My father is already here, right? Emperor Jiawen took a step back and reached out to fan his nose. Situ Xingqian was instantly embarrassed, and her face was burning. She involuntarily let go of her hands and wanted to crawl into the ground. After being locked in here, she had to settle all her daily needs in this small space, and she couldn't even leave the cage. One could imagine what kind of person she was now. Situ Xingqian didn't know how long she had been locked in here, because every day felt like a year. Every second she spent here made her feel like she was one step closer to breaking down. Ever since she was born, she was country Xing Luo's honorable eldest princess. Why had she ever experienced such torture? She had already cursed Emperor Jiawen countless times in her heart. If she had the chance, she would definitely cut him into pieces. But at this point, she was still on the other party's chopping board, so she naturally didn't dare to be too presumptuous. Emperor Jiawen sneered. He's here, but he should be on his way back now, right? Situ Xingqian's expression instantly froze. It was as if a bucket of cold water had been poured over her head, extinguishing all her hopes and desires. Impossible. My father definitely won't leave me alone. You're lying to me. Situ Xingqian screamed in disbelief. Father has always doted on me the most. How can he leave just like that? Don't worry. He's only going back to prepare for your wedding with Rongjin. You're his most beloved daughter, so of course he wouldn't abandon you. Oh, right. The date is set to be half a month later," said Emperor Jiawen slowly. "After the emperor's funeral, we will hold your wedding." Originally, it was set to be a month later, but your imperial father seemed to be in a hurry, so he brought it forward by half a month. Situ Xingqian was completely stunned. What? My wedding with Rongjin? She had already told her father that Rongjin was a fake heaven's chosen son. On the one hand, father came to cancel her marriage agreement with Rongjin, and on the other hand, he wanted to take her away from here. But now, what was going on? Time was tight, so it was inevitable that some things were overlooked. But thankfully, Rongjin was no longer the crown prince. So many complicated and long formalities could be skipped. Emperor Jiawen sounded relaxed, as if he were really happy for them. Situ Xingqian was so angry that her entire body trembled. He did it on purpose. Emperor Jiawen clearly did it on purpose. He wanted to use this opportunity to thoroughly humiliate them. You. At this stage, Situ Xingqian finally tore off her last layer of disguise. Her sharp voice reverberated in the dark space, and it sounded more like a female, ghost shrill scream. She stared at Emperor Jiawen with all her might, wanting to find some clues from his blurry face. But nothing. Emperor Jiawen didn't look like he was lying. Situ Xingqian's heart finally sank. She knew that Emperor Jiawen was forcing her. The moonlight was bright, and the night breeze was gentle. The imperial city at night seemed to have fallen into a deep slumber as it was silent. Chu Luiyue followed that mysterious person all the way. Very quickly, she discovered that the person was heading in the direction of the palace. Her heart skipped a beat, and she instantly hesitated. It wasn't that she hadn't been to the palace before, so she clearly knew that the entire palace was actually a gigantic Xian formation. Outside the imperial palace, there was an invisible barrier. With her current strength, it would be too difficult for her to sneak in without anyone noticing. But the person in front didn't seem to care about all this as he continued to move forward quickly. Chu Luiyue took a deep breath in and still followed him. No matter what, I must get to the bottom of this matter today. After around 15 minutes, the two of them finally arrived outside the palace's walls. This place was rather secluded, and other than the patrolling imperial guards, there weren't many people guarding it. But Chu Luiyue could clearly feel the barrier's suppression when she stood below the wall. She looked up at that mysterious person. That person stretched out his hand, and a ray of starlight flashed across his fingertips. A neat cut instantly appeared on the barrier. Also, it didn't cause any commotion. Chu Luiyue's eyelids harshly twitched. This move, I've seen it before. It had helped me a lot before, but I didn't expect that today, Schwa. The barrier opened, and that person had already jumped over the wall. He had entered the palace. Chu Luiyue could only see the corner of a black shirt flashing across the wall. She took a few steps back and quickly rushed forward. She stepped on the wall. Then, her body was parallel to the ground, and she directly rushed up the wall. She easily flipped her body, bent her legs slightly, and landed on the ground. She looked up and saw that the person had continued to move forward. Chu Luiyue pursed her lips. This person wasn't worried that she wouldn't be able to keep up. But she didn't have time to think too much and quickly chased after him. The two of them were like night cats, completely hidden in the thick darkness of the night. But soon, Chu Luiyue was shocked to find that this person seemed to be very familiar with the layout of the palace. Under that person's lead, they easily avoided all the patrolling and guarding palace guards. They drove straight in. Chu Luiyue was even more puzzled. Why was this person so familiar with the palace? As if he had been here countless times. Especially towards the end, they went further and further away, but that person's speed was consistent from beginning to end. Every step he took was without any hesitation. After about the time it took to drink a cup of tea, that person finally stopped. Chu Luiyue stood still, hiding in the shadows, and looked forward. When she saw the words Blessing Palace on the signboard, her brows furrowed slightly. Why did he come to this place? It didn't seem like suddenly. Chu Luiyue's gaze focused. No, there were a few obscure auras around the Blessing Palace. There was someone inside. Just as she was thinking about who would be here at this time of the night, that mysterious person suddenly walked forward. Mobile users, please browse for a better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 424. Chu Luiwei originally thought that the person was going to directly go over, but he saw something fall from the person's hands when he walked over the next moment. Under the illumination of the moonlight, that thing reflected a faint light. A faint fragrance wafted out. Chu Luiwei was stunned. This is phosphor powder. Just a little bit of it can ignite a sea of fire. This person, is he planning to burn Blessing Palace down? But this is only the periphery of Blessing Palace. Even if he sprinkles the phosphor powder here, it won't immediately burn inside. What was he doing this for? Suddenly, Blessing Palace's side door opened. Chu Luiwei immediately looked up. A figure walked out from it. Chu Luiwei focused his gaze. It's indeed Emperor Jiawen. After thinking about it, he's the only person who can mobilize such a large force in the palace. As the distance was quite far, and the person's face was mostly hidden in the darkness, Chu Luiwei couldn't clearly see his current expression. Emperor Jiawen raised his hand and pointed. He then turned around to take a look before leaving. Along with his figure, two of the few obscure auras disappeared as well. It was obvious that the remaining people were still in charge of guarding this place. Chu Luiwei squinted his eyes. There aren't many people who can make Emperor Jiawen spend so much effort and carefully trap them in the palace. He thought of Situ Yan's ugly expression when he saw him previously. The person who's locked here should be Situ Xingqian. Emperor Jiawen clearly wants to get something out of her, but judging from his previous appearance, there shouldn't be any progress. Chu Luiwei looked at the mysterious person in front of him. He must know that Situ Xingqian is trapped here, so he purposely lured her here. But why is he doing this? Without waiting for Chu Luiwei to ask, that person silently walked in another direction. His footsteps seemed slow, but they were actually very fast. He also perfectly hid his tracks. If Chu Luiwei hadn't been staring at him, he probably wouldn't have been able to recognize his movements. For some reason, she seemed to be able to guess that person's thoughts. So when he gradually approached the Blessing Palace, she obediently stayed where she was. With her current realm, she would only become a target if she went out. Moreover, it would definitely attract the attention of those experts in the dark. Therefore, she might as well not do anything and just wait and see what would happen. Soon, that person's figure disappeared behind a pillar at the very edge of the Blessing and Peace Palace. Chu Luiwei held his breath. Suddenly, a powerful pressure came down from the sky at high speed. She immediately looked up. He saw a gray-robed man walking in the air. He was wearing a curtained hat that covered his face, so his appearance could not be seen. However, judging from his slightly hunched shoulders, he seemed to be quite old. The moment he appeared, three figures instantly appeared around the Blessing Palace. The gray-robed old man was surrounded in the middle. Who are you? How dare you barge into Yao Chen's palace? Chu Luiwei squinted her eyes. The three of them were clearly sent by Emperor Jiawen to guard this place. Also, the three of them were all Stage 5 warriors. There were only a handful of Stage 5 warriors in the entire country Yao Chen, yet Emperor Jiawen actually left three of them here. This showed how strict he was with Situ Xingqian. This lineup was enough to stop most people from barging in. However, that gray-robed old man was an entire stage higher than them. The higher the stage, the greater the difference between the two parties. Even if the three of them worked together, they might not be this old man's match. This old man came here today only to take someone away. As long as you know what's good for you, I won't make things difficult for you, said the gray-robed old man calmly. His voice was low and hoarse, and his tone was calm. However, it had a high and mighty aura, as if it was an order. He's clearly the one who came to snatch Situ Xingqian. Yet he said that he wouldn't make things difficult for the other party. How arrogant! Chu Luiwei thought quickly. This person clearly came for Situ Xingqian, but as for his identity, it's hard to guess. How dare you? What do you think this is? Do you think you can come and go as you please? The three of them were clearly enraged by the old man's words. They looked at each other and rushed forward together. I'll teach you a lesson today. Faced with the three people's attacks, the gray-robed old man didn't seem to care at all. He laughed softly and didn't hide his disdain at all. With just the three of you, seeing that the three of them were getting closer and closer to him, he didn't move at all. Kill. The three forces instantly flew out at the same time. Seeing that he was about to be hit, the old man finally raised his hand. His palm was exceptionally wide, and it was like a fan as it silently landed. A gigantic silver palm print appeared above him. Mountain River Seal, hollered the old man. The silver palm print instantly pressed down. In the next moment, the three origin powers actually collapsed and completely dissipated. The violent force spread in all directions. However, at this moment, the old man's palm curled up slightly, and all of the crazy energy turbulence was silently contained. Everything happened silently, but it immediately caused the three people's expressions to change. A Stage 6 warrior was actually so powerful. Go! The gray-robed old man gently waved his palm. A terrifying force crazily gushed out from his palm. The gigantic palm print gradually dissipated, and finally, the star turned into a silver ring that kept expanding. Quickly retreat. The three of them felt that something was wrong and immediately wanted to escape. But it was too late. The powerful pressure contained within the silver ring almost made them unable to breathe. All of them were frozen on the spot. No matter how hard they struggled, they were unable to take even half a step away. They could only allow the silver ring to crush their bodies. Puff! One of them couldn't take it and spat out a mouthful of blood. The other two weren't any better. Their faces were pale, and they couldn't say a word. Overestimating yourself. The gray-robed old man sneered and moved his palm slightly. You don't, huh? Before the person who struggled to open his mouth could finish his words, a strange light flashed across the silver ring and passed through his chest. Following a muffled sound, his body flew out and fell heavily on the ground. Chu Luiwei became even more cautious and controlled her aura. At the same time, many guesses flashed through her mind. To dare to come here with such fanfare, it was enough to show how arrogant this person was. 1 against 3, and he was actually so relaxed. The gray-robed old man obviously didn't put those people in his eyes. After dealing with them, he went straight for the entrance of the Blessing Palace. However, just as he was about to approach, a gigantic Xian formation suddenly appeared above the Blessing Palace and completely enveloped it. The gray-robed old man finally stopped, because this Xian formation was actually quite troublesome. But Chu Luiwei, who was hiding in the dark, suddenly had her eyes lit up. She could use that Xian formation to enter the Blessing Palace. Digression, Kawenka is about to faint. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience from Love Network. Chapter 425. The gigantic Xian formation shone brightly, and the entire Blessing Palace was shrouded in the dazzling light. Under such circumstances, I'll definitely be discovered if I go over directly. But if I merge into the Xian formation, I can conceal myself. Chu Luiwei stared at the Xian formation carefully as her fingers slid in mid-air, outlining the rough outline. She had never seen this Xian formation before, and this Xian formation's level wasn't low. Thus, she couldn't replicate its original appearance in such a short time. However, she could easily take it apart. A sharp whistle suddenly came from mid-air. Bang! A firework suddenly bloomed in the dark night sky. This is a warning signal. This commotion will definitely attract everyone's attention in the palace. The elder in gray was thinking about how to break the Xian formation when he heard this sound. He immediately turned around. When he realized that the three of them had sent out a request for help, he couldn't help but snort. Huh, it seems like you're really not afraid of blowing this matter up. The man who was previously thrown onto the ground crawled up with difficulty and spat out a mouthful of blood. He was also holding a tube in his hand. He was clearly the one who lit the firework just now. When the other two saw this, they looked at each other and saw deep worry in each other's eyes. They rushed to that person's side and anxiously said, "Did you forget about Princess Jinghong? Have you forgotten what His Majesty said before? Situ Xingqian is locked up in the Blessing Palace. His Majesty placed a lot of importance on this matter and even invited us to guard her together. Even the Empress, who was under house arrest back then, didn't receive such treatment. This shows how much His Majesty cares about this matter. Before this, His Majesty had repeatedly instructed us not to let outsiders know that Situ Xingqian was hiding here. But once this news is released, everyone will know about it. In less than 15 minutes, I believe that all the experts in and out of the palace will immediately gather here. The man who spat out blood slowly wiped the blood from the corner of his mouth and stared at the elder in gray. His Majesty also said that the most important thing is to keep an eye on her. If she's taken away, then we won't be able to bear the consequences. The other two looked at each other and hesitated for a moment. In the end, they did not say anything. They once again spread out and surrounded the gray-robed old man. Since it had come to this, they could only do their best. Seeing the three of them in such a formation, the gray-robed old man was stunned for a moment before he suddenly laughed out loud. "Looks like you won't shed tears until you see the coffin. Don't blame this old man for being impolite. Stop him." The three of them also made up their minds and charged forward together. The four of them instantly engaged in a fierce battle. Now is the time. Chu Luiwei retracted his aura and quickly headed for the Blessing and Harmony Palace. At the same time, several incomplete Xian formations appeared around her. Compared to the gigantic Xian formation above, this small Xian formation did not have any sense of existence. However, the patterns and light were able to envelop Chu Luiwei's body. Chu Luiwei kept moving forward, completely hiding his figure in the countless streams of light. The most important thing was that even though the few Xian formations that she copied weren't complete, they were more or less compatible with the Xian formation above. It was precisely because of this subtle compatibility that the Xian formation directly ignored Chu Luiwei's intrusion. Chu Luiwei's path was smooth and unobstructed. She successfully arrived at the side door. Previously, Emperor Jiawen had exited from this inconspicuous spot. Thinking of this, Chu Luiwei silently sneaked in. Her actions were very fast, and she disappeared behind the door in the blink of an eye. She did not even attract the attention of the gray-robed old man and the other three people. After entering the palace, Chu Luiwei immediately started searching for Situ Xingqian's whereabouts. Under the light of the Xian formation outside, everything in the palace was much clearer. However, Chu Luiwei looked around and did not see anyone. The palace was empty, and there was even a thin layer of dust on the table. This place had clearly been empty for a period of time. Chu Luiwei surveyed her surroundings. Suddenly, her gaze focused, and she looked at the bookshelf on the wall. At first glance, there was nothing wrong with the bookshelf, but the books on it seemed to be placed messily. Even if Rongjin didn't stay here long ago, everything here should at least be placed neatly. Chu Luiwei walked over and touched the bookshelf to look for clues. When she saw the inkstone, she knitted her brows. The inkstone's material was very normal, and the carving was average. It didn't look like something that would appear in the palace. She reached out and touched it before she tried to turn it. Ka! The ground under her feet suddenly moved. A staircase that extended downwards appeared in front of her. Chu Luiwei paused for a moment before jumping in. She walked down step by step. The surroundings were dark and damp, and there was only a faint light when she was very far away. However, other than her, there was no one else around. She silently walked forward. After walking for some time, an exit finally appeared in front of her. An extremely sealed space appeared in front of Chu Luiwei. When Situ Xingqian heard the footsteps again, she thought that Emperor Jiawen had returned. Hence, she didn't even look up. She didn't raise her head and said, "I don't know. No matter how much you ask me. I don't know. What don't you know?" The clear voice of a woman suddenly sounded. Situ Xingqian's heart skipped a beat, and she finally looked over. Even though that face was blurry, that figure and that voice couldn't be mistaken. Chu Luiwei. She actually came here. Situ Xingqian's mind was in a mess as she clenched her fists tightly, and deep hatred flashed across her eyes. Chu Luiwei, what are you doing here? Chu Luiyue walked over, and her eyes were like water as they lightly swept across Situ Xingqian. Her gaze was very calm, but Situ Xingqian felt as if she had been stripped naked. It was extremely embarrassing. "You killed the Empress, right?" asked Chu Luiyue suddenly. Situ Xingqian clenched her teeth. "What nonsense are you spouting? You also let Rong Jin out of Crown Prince Mansion, right?" asked Chu Luiyue again. "No, I didn't." "Why? Did Emperor Jiawen send you to interrogate me?" Situ Xingqian's voice was filled with intense anger. If looks could kill, Situ Xingqian's venomous gaze would have cut Chu Luiyue into pieces. Chu Luiyue's expression didn't change, as if he didn't care about her answer. "What did you get from the Empress? Hand it over." As Chu Luiyue spoke, he stretched out his hand. Situ Xingqian suddenly widened her eyes. "How does Chu Luiyue know about this?" Chu Luiyue's eyes sparkled. "If you're more honest, I can tell you who the real Heaven's chosen son is." Digression. I'm so sleepy that I can't open my eyes. I can't take it anymore as I sit in front of the computer. Tomorrow at 6 p.m., mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 426. The Real Heaven's Chosen Son. Hearing this, Situ Xingqian's heart skipped a beat. How did you know? Shouldn't only the Empress and Rong Jin know about this? Could it be that Rong Jin told Chu Luiyue about it before? No. Why would Rong Jin tell others about such an important thing so easily? Even if he likes Chu Luiyue a little, he wouldn't go to this extent. Besides, Chu Luiyue clearly knows that Rong Jin isn't the real Heaven's chosen son. Other than the few of us who were in the Imperial Mausoleum that day, who else would know about this? Situ Xingqian looked at Chu Luiyue warily. Suddenly, an idea popped up in her mind, and she couldn't help but blurt out. She suddenly blurted out, "You were also in the Imperial Mausoleum that day?" As she was shocked, her hoarse voice became sharp. Chu Luiyue shrugged and nonchalantly said, "There's no such thing as a wall. I'll tell you one thing. I'm only going to ask you one last time. Will you give it to me or not?" Situ Xingqian grabbed the railing, and her eyes sparkled. Since you already know about this, I don't have to hide it anymore. I got the key to Golden Inheritance Peak's barrier from the Empress. Even though the Empress secretly copied it, it can still open the barrier. Besides, I've already given that thing to Rong Jin. If not, how do you think he could enter Golden Inheritance Peak so smoothly? Chu Luiyue raised his brows. When she saw Rong Jin and the rest enter the Imperial Mausoleum with Emperor Jiawen, she had already guessed this point. But this wasn't the main point. "You know that's not what I want," Chu Luiyue lightly said. Situ Xingqian forcefully pretended to be calm and said without changing her expression, "The Empress only gave me this." "Oh." Chu Luiyue smiled in a seemingly smiling manner. "If it's really that simple, why would Emperor Jiawen use such a huge force to lock Situ Xingqian up? He even specially came here to secretly interrogate her on a dark and windy night." Initially, she didn't think of this, but after seeing Emperor Jiawen and the terrifying defense around her, she guessed that Situ Xingqian had something that Emperor Jiawen wanted. Judging from Emperor Jiawen's attitude toward Heptagon Alley, he should know the real secret behind it. Hence, he didn't want to get anything out of Situ Xingqian, but wanted to get something. She was just casually bluffing, but judging from the other party's reaction, she was basically certain. Situ Xingqian felt guilty under Chu Luiyue's stare. How could this be? From the beginning to the end, she was extremely secretive and was not discovered by anyone. If I wasn't caught by Emperor Jiawen in the Imperial Mausoleum, I wouldn't be trapped here. She turned around as if she didn't want to continue the conversation with Chu Luiyue. It seems that there's nothing more to say between us. The moment she turned around, she quickly looked at the jade bracelet on her wrist. The two dots of light had already overlapped. This was something that Elder Zong Yi had specially given to her when she left Mingyue Tianshan. This jade bracelet contained one Dao Sec's Elder Zong's strength. Relying on this, he could quickly find her no matter where she was. When she was locked here, she immediately asked Elder Zong Yi for help. Now that the two dots of light overlapped, it meant that Elder Zong Yi was nearby. However, he didn't come even after a long time. Instead, Chu Liyue came. Hong, Hong, Hong. A series of explosions suddenly came from outside. Even the entire space started to shake. Situ Xingqian suddenly looked up. This, Elder Zong Yi is fighting with someone outside. She was elated. Elder Zong Yi is very strong, so it shouldn't be a problem for him to deal with these people from country Yaochun. As long as he can bring me away from here, Situ Xingqian. Chu Liyue suddenly spoke. Situ Xingqian instinctively turned around. Wah! Something suddenly flew towards her face. The alarm in her heart went off, and she immediately wanted to retreat. However, she was currently trapped in this metal cage, and her position was extremely small. She had just taken a step back when she touched the railing. She waved her sleeves and harshly swept that thing away. Chu Liyue lightly raised his brows. Situ Xingqian's force was indeed suppressed, and she couldn't even use a bit of force at this point. Emperor Zhaowen really made all the necessary preparations to deal with me. However, this time, I'm going to benefit from it. Chu Liyue, don't think that I can't do anything to you just because I'm trapped here. Situ Xingqian quickly glanced at the ground and realized that it was actually a jade bottle. After it landed on the ground, it directly broke and a green liquid slowly flowed out. Smelling that weird smell, she coldly laughed. You want to poison me with just this small bottle of Qing Shui Yang? Qing Shui Yang's poison was very strong, but she didn't even touch it previously, so it was completely useless. Chu Liyue's lips curved up into a smile. You're mistaken. I haven't done anything yet. Situ Xingqian was instantly dazed. A silver light suddenly flew out from Chu Liyue's fingertips. It directly splashed into the small puddle of Qing Shui Yang. Bang! A light sound was heard, and a ball of purplish-green smoke rose up. Situ Xingqian's face changed drastically. But the next moment, the purplish-green smoke rapidly rushed toward her. She hurriedly covered her mouth and nose. Don't you know that Qing Shui Yang's poison will instantly increase by a few times when it comes into contact with Dabin powder? Besides, the most convenient thing is that as long as this thing touches your skin, even if it's just a little bit, it will instantly seep into your organs. A terrifying burning sensation came from her hand. Situ Xingqian lowered her head to take a look and saw that her originally smooth and white skin was actually rapidly drying up. It also had a mottled purplish-green color. It looked very scary. What's going on? What did you do to me? Situ Xingqian screamed in shock. Chu Liyue raised his brows slightly, glanced at her hand, smiled, and nonchalantly said, Oh, I see. It seems like you really don't know that the side effect of this poison is that you'll rapidly age from the outside to the inside. Now it's your hand. Later, it should be your face. As he spoke, Chu Liyue shook his head in pity. This is mentioned in the footnote on page 582 of the Celestial Physician's Handbook. As a celestial physician, you actually didn't even read this. Situ Xingqian was furious. The Celestial Physician's Handbook was a very basic medical book, and it was also a beginner's book for all celestial physician. However, there were too many things to remember in it. Who would pay attention to a small footnote? Now, the thing that scared her the most was her face. Chu Liyue, you're really sinister and vicious. Situ Xingqian's hands trembled. If Rong Xiao knows that you're such a vicious woman, he'll definitely regret marrying you. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 427. Chu Liyue chuckled lightly. You're finally admitting it? From the start, Situ Xingqian had been hostile toward her. No matter if it was during the Qing Jiao competition or when Situ Xingqian framed her for imprisoning Rongzhen, Situ Xingqian could tell that Situ Xingqian didn't just dislike Situ Xingqian, but she was also jealous and resentful of her. Situ Xingqian's chest seemed to be blocked by something, and she felt so stifled that she was about to explode. She finally couldn't hold it in and harshly scolded her. So what if he is? I've liked him for so many years, but he doesn't even remember who I am. What about you? You're just an abandoned good-for-nothing from a declining family. How can you compare to me? In terms of looks, I'm not inferior to Chu Luiyue. In terms of background, I'm many times better than Chu Luiyue. In terms of my relationship with Rong Xiu, I've been with him at Minghua Tianshan for so many years. How can Chu Luiyue compare to him? He's always been high and mighty and keeps all women at a respectful distance. But you, he actually knelt down in front of so many people for you, all for the sake of a marriage agreement with you. I'm clearly the one who understands him the most. Only I'm worthy of him in this world. Situ Xingqian's heart ached every time she thought of this. She didn't understand what was so good about Chu Luiyue that Rong Xiu was willing to treat her like this. It's as if he gave all his gentleness and love to only one person. Previously, when Rong Xiu sent people to burn the clothes with the cloud embroidery, she still had a sliver of hope in her heart. But later on, everything happened one after another, and they all slapped her in the face. Every time, it made her understand that Rong Xiu cared about this person more than she imagined. Situ Xingqian's hatred for Chu Luiyue also deepened. Chu Luiyue looked at her face, which was contorted from anger and hatred, and lightly smiled. How do you know that he doesn't know? Situ Xingqian's expression suddenly froze. Since you claim to understand him, then, do you know why he did this? Chu Luiyue said slowly. Every word was like a sharp knife that harshly stabbed Situ Xingqian's heart. The blood drained from her face in an instant, leaving behind a face full of fear and unwillingness. That's right. How could someone like Rong Xiu not know what kind of person Chu Luiyue was? But he still chose her. There is only one explanation. He was deeply in love with Chu Luiyue. She was the only one he wanted. From a very long time ago, she knew that people like Rong Xiu would only fall in love with one person if they didn't fall in love. Once they did, they would only love one person for the rest of their lives, and they would give everything they had. You, what exactly did you do? Situ Xingqian clenched her teeth, and her knuckles turned green from gripping the railing too tightly. At this moment, she inadvertently looked down and saw that her wrist had also turned purple. She was taken aback. If I really turn into an old lady with bruises all over my body, then in the future, there will be no future. Once she thought of that scene, she felt goosebumps all over her body. I definitely won't allow myself to become like that. As long as you bring me out, I guarantee that I'll hand the item over to you, said Situ Xingqian hatefully. But you have to guarantee that you'll also cure the poison in my body. If not, even if I go to hell, I'll definitely turn into a malicious spirit and come back to take revenge on you. Chu Luiyue's lips curved up slightly, and he thought to himself, interesting. Seriously speaking, I'm the one who went to hell and came back to take revenge. However, I didn't turn into a malicious spirit, but became Chu Luiyue. Who's afraid of who? It seems like the person outside is here to save you. Chu Luiyue suddenly said, You want to go out with me and take the chance to escape? Situ Xingqian's heart skipped a beat. I don't know what you're talking about. Chu Luiyue didn't need her answer either. I'm only here to take that item, not to save you. If you don't want to hand it over, then, so be it. I've been here long enough. It's time for me to leave. Then, Chu Luiyue actually turned around and left. Situ Xingqian finally panicked. Stop right there. Detoxify the poison first. I can even feel that the poison has already spread to my arm. It wouldn't be long before her face would be completely ruined. Chu Luiyue waved her hand. Seeing that her figure was about to disappear in front of her, Situ Xingqian finally clenched her teeth and said, I'll give it to you. Chu Luiyue stood still, then turned around and smiled at her. Wouldn't it have been better if you did this earlier? Situ Xingqian's face was filled with vigilance. Cure the poison first. Chu Luiyue gently flicked her finger. A palm-sized wooden cover fell. The purplish-green smoke seemed to be attracted by a certain force as it changed its direction and surged toward the wooden cover. When a last wisp of smoke disappeared into the wooden cover, Situ Xingqian finally heaved a sigh of relief. Take the item out, said Chu Luiyue. Situ Xingqian widened her eyes and raised her hands. The poison in my body hasn't been cured yet. When you give it to me, I'll naturally cure it for you. Chu Luiyue chuckled. Situ Xingqian choked and cursed in her heart. This Chu Luiyue is really cunning. He won't take any losses. She hesitated for a while, but she knew that Chu Luiwei could do anything. Hence, she didn't dare to be too presumptuous and could only touch her jade bracelet. Then, a wooden box appeared in front of her. Chu Luiwei's gaze lightly swept across the jade bracelet. It turns out that it's a cosmic bracelet. This item's value is much higher than a cosmic bag's. This is because it's easy to recognize a cosmic bag, but a cosmic bracelet looks no different from a normal bracelet. This should be one of the reasons why Sidu Xingqian could keep this item intact and not let Emperor Jiaowen take it away. This is the box that the Empress left behind when she was alive. Sidu Xingqian took a deep breath in and finally pushed the wooden box forward. As long as you can open this metal cage, the item in this wooden box will be yours. Then, she took another step back, as if she really wanted to hand the item over. However, she sneered in her heart. This metal cage has an extremely strong restriction. If Chu Luiwei wants to take this item, he must solve this problem. If I can't solve it, this item will still be mine. If I can solve it, this metal cage will definitely be opened. I can then take the chance to escape. Anyway, Elder Zhongyi is outside, so I can definitely succeed. Chu Luiwei squinted his eyes as if he had a headache. Sidu Xingqian quietly stood there, but she was secretly adjusting her breathing, waiting to deliver a fatal blow at any moment. Suddenly, Chu Luiwei lightly said, "Chu Luiwei, Dumpling, bring the item over." A red shadow darted out. It directly pounced toward the wooden box. Sidu Xingqian knitted her brows and finally recognized it. It was Chu Luiwei's blood ferret. The next moment, she heard a kacha sound, and a hole suddenly appeared on the metal cage. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 428. Sidu Xingqian immediately dashed toward the opening. At the same time, she stretched out her hand to snatch the wooden box back. At this moment, Dumpling's figure darted out and directly bumped into the wooden box. The wooden box instantly moved to the side. Sidu Xingqian's hand narrowly missed it. Indignance flashed across her eyes, but she didn't hesitate in her actions as she continued forward, planning to leave through the opening. The item in the wooden box is very important, but it can't be compared to my life. As long as I can escape from here, everything will be fine. After I leave, I still have a chance to snatch the wooden box back. However, just as she poked her head out of the hole, a cold wind suddenly attacked her. Bang! Chu Luiwei harshly kicked Sidu Xingqian's face. Sidu Xingqian's figure instantly flew backward and heavily bumped into the metal cage behind her. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Dumpling directly threw the wooden box out. Chu Luiwei easily caught it and opened it. Inside the wooden box was a roll of goatskin. An indescribably powerful aura spread out from the top of the mountain. Chu Luiwei was certain in his heart. This is it. Pack! Sidu Xingqian closed the wooden box again and placed it in her cosmic bag. Her series of actions could be said to be smooth. Sidu Xingqian finally recovered her senses at this point. Her mind was buzzing, and her face was in excruciating pain. There was a strong smell of blood in her mouth. She opened her mouth and spat out a mouthful of blood, but she realized that there was actually half a tooth in it. Chu Luiwei used all his strength in that kick, so she didn't even have time to avoid it and bumped right into it. Just like that, half of her front tooth was forcefully broken. Sidu Xingqian's hands trembled as she touched her face. Her face was filled with sticky and sweet-smelling bloodstains. It also quickly became red and swollen. She didn't need to look in the mirror to know how disheveled and ugly she looked. Sidu Xingqian's lungs were about to explode from anger. Not only did Chu Luiwei snatch the wooden box, but he even disfigured me. This completely broke the last string in her heart. "I'll kill you." Sidu Xingqian rushed toward Chu Luiwei hysterically. A silver light flashed, and a dagger appeared in Chu Luiwei's hand. Then, she gently raised her wrist. Chi! A thin blade flew out from the dagger. It went straight for Sidu Xingqian's face. Sensing the piercing, murderous intent, Sidu Xingqian's heart sank, and she immediately dodged. However, With her origin power sealed and the inhumane torture she had endured these past few days, she was completely exhausted. As a result, her pace was slower than usual. However, Chu Yue's flying dagger was very fast. The sound of a sharp weapon piercing through flesh could be heard. The flying dagger directly pierced through Situ Xingqian's left shoulder. A bloody hole appeared and blood splattered everywhere. Situ Xingqian shrieked and collapsed to the ground. She frantically looked at her shoulder and realized that it was still bleeding. That dark red blood quickly dyed a large area of her clothes red. The air was filled with the thick smell of blood, which was mixed with the originally unpleasant smell. It was almost nauseating. Situ Xingqian was just about to stand up when a second flying dagger flew out from Chu Yue's dagger. This time it was her left ankle. A few pieces of broken bone splattered on the floor. Situ Xingqian was in so much pain that her face was ghastly pale. She couldn't even speak and could only tremble as she curled up into a ball. Only her eyes were filled with hatred as she stared at Chu Yue as if she wanted to cut her into pieces. Chu Yue never cared about such gazes. Boom! A loud explosion came from outside again. It's time to leave. Chu Yue turned around and ran outside. Situ Xingqian struggled to get up, but she still collapsed in the end. She could only watch as Chu Yue's figure disappeared into the darkness. Her chest shook, and she vomited blood again. Chu Yue, if there's a chance in the future, I'll definitely make her pay back everything that I've suffered today. Situ Xingqian took a deep breath in and bit her index finger. A drop of blood quickly flowed out. She then rubbed the drop of blood on the jade bracelet on her wrist. A faint light flashed, and the drop of blood was rapidly absorbed into the jade bracelet, disappearing without a trace. However, the two overlapping dots of light gradually turned blood red. Chu Yue went up the stairs, and the moment she jumped out, she felt the terrifying aftermath from outside. She looked outside and shockingly discovered that the previously complete and indestructible Xian formation had a few cracks now. It was on the verge of collapsing. In front, the gray-robed elder was already surrounded by many Imperial guards. At one glance, there were 3 layers inside and 3 layers outside. There were even quite a few corpses piled up at the front. It was obvious that the gray-robed elder killed them all by himself. Chu Yue knitted her brows. It seems like the gray-robed elder is stronger than I expected. It was also because of this that both parties were in a stalemate. They were in a stalemate. Suddenly, the gray-robed elder lowered his head as if he were looking at something. His back was facing Chu Yue, so she couldn't see what he was doing. But the next moment, the gray-robed elder's aura increased tremendously. Anyone who blocks me will be killed without mercy. This low and deep voice contained a shocking amount of energy. An invisible wave spread out in all directions with him as the center. Then, he actually turned around and directly rushed toward Blessing Palace. Chu Yue's heart skipped a beat. He's coming in the direction I'm facing. Voila! The defensive Xian formation was completely torn apart. As long as he enters this palace, he'll immediately discover my presence. Chu Yue surveyed her surroundings and realized that no matter which direction she escaped in, she would attract attention. Just as she was in a dilemma, a greenish-white fire suddenly started burning from Blessing Palace's side door. This was the scene that Emperor Jiawen saw when he rushed over. The gigantic silver Xian formation had already been torn apart, and a gray-robed elder had already rushed to Blessing Palace's door. The greenish-white fire rose up and instantly surrounded the entire Blessing Palace. His temples suddenly throbbed, and all the blood in his body seemed to have solidified. Stop him! Stop him! Situ Xingqian is still inside. This person clearly wants to use the fire as a smokescreen to bring Situ Xingqian out. This definitely won't do. Actually, Emperor Jiawen didn't know that the gray-robed elder was also trapped in the fire. The fire started very suddenly, and it was very fierce. Even though he was a stage 6 warrior, it was a little troublesome to deal with it. At the same time, Chu Luiwei, who was in the palace, saw the jumping fire and quickly rushed out of the window at the side without hesitation. When she jumped into the fire, her body was instantly wrapped in a layer of red fire. A figure suddenly appeared in front of her. It blocked her path. It's that mysterious person. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 429. Chu Luiwei immediately became alert. Is he going to attack me at this time? The wide hooded robe completely covered his body, and there was a black scarf on his face. From head to toe, he only revealed a pair of narrow black eyes. Chu Luiwei saw that pair of eyes. A strong sense of familiarity surged in her heart. Chu Luiwei's pupils constricted. A name was stuck in her throat, as if it would jump out at any moment. He looked at her just like that. His eyes were like a pool of stagnant water without any ripples. However, Chu Luiwei instantly understood what he meant. She looked at him and slowly extended her hand. Her fingertips were still trembling slightly, but in the end, she slowly and firmly made a gesture. Finally, the man's expression changed. The next moment, something suddenly flew out of his sleeve. Chu Luiwei's eyes flashed with silver light. The next moment, she felt as if her entire body had been dragged into a strange space. Her surroundings were dark, and a strong sense of oppression instantly surged. However, Chu Luiwei did not panic. That was because she knew that this was a Yuan tool specially used for teleportation, the Heaven Shadow Ring. This item was extremely precious. Even in the Tianling dynasty, it was a priceless treasure. This was because this Heaven Shadow Ring only needed to inject a small amount of force into it to instantly teleport a person from one place to another. According to the distance of teleportation, it was divided into different grades. The higher the grade, the rarer it was and the safer it was. Chu Luiwei had this before, so she was quite familiar with it. After sensing it, she was sure that this should be considered a high-grade Heaven's Shadow Ring. Although the pressure of the spatial turbulence made people feel uncomfortable, there was nothing to worry about. Furthermore, she could feel that the person was standing not far from her. Even though she could not see anything, Chu Luiwei was not worried. Only that pair of long and narrow eyes kept flashing in her mind. She took a deep breath and suppressed all the questions and emotions in her heart. Not long after, the surrounding pressure suddenly disappeared. Chu Luiwei heaved a sigh of relief. He looked up and realized that he had returned home. The lamp in her room was still burning, emitting a faint light as if she had never left. Looking at the moon hanging in the night sky, Chu Luiwei did a rough calculation. The entire process took less than 2 hours. A gaze that seemed to materialize fell on her body. Chu Luiwei's heart skipped a beat. He took a deep breath and finally turned around. Their eyes met. Chu Luiwei's hands curled up slightly in his sleeves before he finally opened his mouth. You came here today to help me get something from Situ Xingqian. The man didn't speak, but the expression in his eyes changed. Chu Luiwei couldn't describe that feeling. Her heart felt like it was stuffed with thick and soft cotton, making it hard for her to breathe. However, vaguely, there seemed to be a small ray of light that pierced through the heavy fog in front of her, giving birth to some hope and anticipation in her heart. The two of them fell into silence. Chu Luiwei knew what she was waiting for. She even knew what the other party was waiting for. The cool moonlight shone down, elongating the two of their shadows. Chu Luiwei's hands tightened and loosened. She actually started to sweat in this cold night. After a while, she opened her mouth. Her throat was dry from nervousness. At the foot of the southern mountains, every word and sentence was spoken clearly and clearly. That originally clear voice had become slightly hoarse at this moment, and it carried a faint bitterness and deep yearning. The man's gaze finally stirred up a huge storm. He finally opened his mouth and said his first sentence of the night. 13th you return. The next moment, he lifted his clothes and knelt on one knee. His right hand was tightly pressed against his left chest. Empress concubine, receive a bow from Qihan. It's him. It's really him. Even though she had already guessed his identity, When she heard it with her own ears and confirmed it herself, her heart still beat wildly. It was as if a flame had spread from the bottom of her heart, causing her entire body to burn. Everything around her suddenly became blurry, and only the figure of the person in front of her became clearer. Chu Luiwei had fantasized many times about whether someone would see through her appearance and see through her true identity. She thought of many people, but she didn't expect it to be the 13 U-Guards. Furthermore, it was at this time and in such a place. At the foot of the southern mountain, the 13 U-Guards had returned. This was the secret message between her and the 13 U-Guards. Other than them, no one else knew about it. Therefore, when Chu Luiwei said the first half of the sentence, it was equivalent to admitting her identity. She closed her eyes and turned to walk into the house. Come in and talk. Yes. Chu Luiwei walked into the room, and Chi Han followed behind. After locking all the doors and windows and making sure that no one would notice anything unusual, Chu Luiwei sat down on the stool. She looked up and saw Chi Han standing at the side with his back straight, but his eyes were still looking at her from time to time. Obviously, Chi Han's doubts and shock about this were no less than hers. Chu Luiwei lifted her chin. Sit. Chi Han immediately said, Thank you, Your Highness. Chi Han could just stand. Chu Luiwei finally couldn't help but laugh. After not seeing each other for so long, things had changed, but Chi Han's personality hadn't changed at all. Sit. I'm no longer your master. You don't have to be restrained. Chi Han immediately knelt down again. The 13 U-Guards will always only have you as their master. He paused and lowered his voice. Don't tell me. You don't want us again this time? Chu Luiwei felt a lump in her throat. What did I not want you? Get up first. However, Chi Han was very stubborn. You haven't returned for so long. I have to kneel a little longer to make up for this period of time. Chu Luiwei couldn't help but laugh, but her eyes were red. If you don't get up, you can go back now. Chi Han hesitated for a moment, then got up and stood at the side with his back straight. After pausing for a moment, he said, After you left, this subordinate had nowhere to go. Chu Luiwei turned her face away and held back the tears in her eyes. After a while, the waves in her heart calmed down. Tell me, how have you all been in the past year? How did you find this place? Chi Han said, Actually, before you got into trouble, we already sensed that something was wrong and planned to go back. But on the way back, a few groups of people appeared and tried to kill us. By the time we rushed back, you had already, more than half of the ancestral hall had been burned. Chu Luiwei was stunned. So you went back that day? Chi Han nodded. It's all my fault for being too incompetent and being too late. Chu Luiwei suddenly thought of something. What's with the burn on your hand? Chi Han paused for a moment. It was burned that day, wasn't it? Chu Luiwei asked. Looking at Chi Han's silent expression, her heart suddenly skipped a beat. Take off your face scarf. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 430. Chi Han hesitated for a moment, but he still did as he was told. The 13 U-Guard had always obeyed Her Highness's orders. When he tore off the mask on his face and lifted his hood, Chu Luiwei's heart skipped a beat. The left cheek and neck of the young man in front of her were covered in burn scars. His originally delicate and handsome face had now become like this. Only his long, narrow, and cold eyes were still the same as before. You? Why did you? Chu Luiwei opened her mouth with difficulty. After saying a few words, she seemed to be choked by something. After knowing that Her Highness was in danger, how could the 13 U-Guard escape? It's all because of our incompetence that we couldn't save Her Highness. Chi Han didn't care about the damage to his appearance and body. The only thing he cared about was that he went back too late and couldn't protect Her Highness. Chu Luiwei didn't speak for a while. She always thought that she had died alone. She didn't expect that. The 13 U-Guard had already gone back that day. What happened after that? After that, Jiang Yuqing continued to secretly send people to kill us. We planned to join forces with others to avenge you. But Chu Luiwei smiled faintly. Her eyes were calm, as if she was talking about other people. But you found out that most of them had already betrayed me, right? Chi Han hesitated for a moment before speaking. Actually, Only a few of them betrayed you. But because some of them had important identities, things were a little tricky. Plus, we were just your personal guards and didn't have much say, so Chu Luiwen nodded in understanding. Even if Chi Han didn't say it, she could roughly guess what had happened back then. It's really difficult for you to do all this. What happened after that? Jiang Yuqing and Shangguan Wan wouldn't let the 13 you guard off so easily. They would definitely kill them all. How are the rest of the 13 you guard? Chi Han clenched his fists. Don't worry, the others are fine too. Chu Yoyue's mood improved a little. Now, the 13 you guard was one of the few people she could trust. That's good, that's good. However, Chi Han, why did you leave Heaven's Canopy alone? How did you find me? This was what Chu Luiyue was most curious about. Even she herself felt that reincarnating in someone else's body was too ridiculous. How did Chi Han find her? Furthermore, from the looks of it, it was clear that he already knew about it. Most likely, he came here today to seek confirmation. Your Highness, it's not just me. The other members of the 13 Guard are no longer in the Tianling dynasty. A month after the fire in the Imperial Ancestral Hall, Jiang Yuqing framed us for treason and said that it was because he heard about what we did that you went crazy during your cultivation. After that, he issued an arrest warrant for us. After discussing with the 13 guards, they left Heaven's Canopy together. Chu Yuyue's expression turned even colder. Jiang Yuqing has gone too far. Not only did he force her into a dead end, but he also framed the 13 guards. After she died, with Shangguan Wan's help, he could almost do whatever he wanted in the Tianling dynasty. Under such circumstances, the 13 guards' choice to leave was the best choice. Actually, you don't have to leave Heaven's Canopy even if you leave the Tianling dynasty. Each of you is very powerful. It's a waste of your talents to go outside. Chu Luiyue felt that it was a pity. Chi Han shook his head. Your Highness, you don't know. The reason why we left Heaven's Canopy was because we received a letter. Chu Lua paused. What letter? A letter about you. At this point, Chi Han suddenly looked up and fixed his gaze on Chu Luiyue. The letter said that if we wanted to avenge you, we had to leave Heaven's Canopy first. Chu Luiyue was shocked. Who wrote that letter? Anonymous. Even now, we don't know who wrote it. But, under the circumstances, we didn't have any other choice, so we just did it. What? Chu Luiyue was shocked. It's just a letter, and you actually believed it and did it? The 13 guards were carefully nurtured by her. Each of them was powerful and cautious. Why would they make such a choice because of a letter? Wasn't this too careless? Chi Han's expression became a little strange. Because the handwriting in the letter is exactly the same as yours. Most importantly, there's a token of yours in it. Chu Luiyue almost thought that she had misheard and immediately frowned. Many people had seen her handwriting before. It was not impossible for someone to imitate it. The 13 guards would not believe the words in the letter just because of the similar handwriting. In that case, the token in the letter became extremely important and had a decisive effect. What token? A feather of a 9-colored heavenly pheasant. Chu Luiyue suddenly stood up. The 9-colored heavenly pheasant was her fiend back then. Back then, she chose to perish together with a 9-colored heavenly pheasant and purposely let it out to save its life. But from everything that happened afterward, the 9-colored heavenly pheasant had clearly died that day, and the 9-colored heavenly pheasant's feather was extremely precious. It was the symbol of its status. Ordinary people couldn't even touch it, let alone pluck it off. Before she died, the 9-colored heavenly pheasant's feather was clearly still 9 neat and tidy. Since it was dead, how can anyone get its feather? Where did the feather in the letter come from? Digression, mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI Network. Chapter 431. In the entire Tianling dynasty, she was the only one who had a 9-colored heavenly pheasant. The 13 guards had followed her for many years, so they definitely wouldn't be mistaken. It was because of that feather that we believed the words in the letter. And, from then on, we always thought that you were actually still alive. Chu Luiyue didn't know whether to laugh or cry. If she was dead, she was indeed still here. If she was alive, she had actually just woken up a few months ago. So, after leaving Heaven's Canopy, we split up and secretly searched for your whereabouts. This time, it was also because this subordinate had inquired about some information that caused me to have some doubts about your identity. Chu Luiwen nodded in understanding. So, when you came just now, you deliberately made that gesture? Yes. You're so sure that it's me? Looking at Chi Han's confident look, Chu Luiwen couldn't help but laugh. Chi Han said honestly, I heard that Mu Qinghe was here, so I followed her on purpose. Chu Luiwen's smile froze. At first, I just wanted to know why she stayed here for so long. Later, I realized that something seemed to be wrong, so I started to secretly investigate you. Chi Han made it sound simple, but he had actually made ample preparations before coming here. Before he came, he already had a lot of confidence in his heart. Whether it was the astonishing talent of cultivating all three skills or the extremely similar expression in her eyes, he couldn't help but think more. But, most importantly, especially when I saw that you brought a gift for Hong Yao that day, and Hong Yao's attitude toward you was so familiar, I was certain of my guess. Chu Luiwen was stunned. You know all this? Chi Han nodded honestly. Chu Luiwen, she actually didn't notice at all. Although her current strength couldn't be compared to before, her sensitivity and reaction had always been good. In the end, Chi Han had secretly investigated her for so long, but she actually didn't notice at all. After a long silence, Chu Luiwen finally said faintly, It's been a while since we last met. I haven't seen you for more than a year, but your hiding skills have improved. A suspicious shade of red flashed across Chi Han's unburned face. Your Highness is too kind. Seven Coldness still had a lot of shortcomings. Chu Luiwen, this brat really thought that it was praising him. However, looking at his scarred face, Chu Luiwen felt distressed. If everything was still fine, is there a way to remove your scar? Chi Han was stunned. He didn't expect her to suddenly change the topic. He touched his face and said, Actually, this is quite good. Many people can't recognize my identity, so it's much more convenient to do things. Chu Luiwen suddenly thought of something. Wait, could it be because that flame was mine? At that time, she was inconsolable, so she simply chose to self-destruct. She wanted to perish together with Jiang Yuqing and Shang Wanwan, so she released all the power in her body and burned it. How terrifying is the power of the fire produced by the Tianjing Yuan Meridian? If not, it wouldn't have been able to give the two of them such a harsh blow. I just didn't expect it to implicate Chi Han. Normal herbs can't heal this kind of scar because the Tianjing Yuan Meridian's power must have been left inside. If I can heal my Tianjing Yuan Meridian, I might be able to easily solve this problem. Chu Luiwen rubbed her glabella. Okay, since you're done talking about this, tell me who told you about Situ Xingqian and asked you to come, right? Seven Stars' body froze. At the same time, in the palace, Blessing Palace was completely surrounded by greenish-white flames. The flames shot up to the sky and almost lit up half of the night sky. The Imperial guards and a few strong warriors outside were all trying to barge in. However, the fire produced by the phosphor powder was very strong, so normal water was useless. Seeing that the fire was getting bigger and bigger, the crowd became increasingly anxious. Emperor Zhaowen stood at the side, and no matter how the crowd persuaded him, he refused to leave. The bright and scorching fire shone on his face, making his face look even darker. Your Majesty, don't worry. We've set up a Xian formation around Blessing Palace again, and it's heavily guarded. Anyone who comes out from there won't be able to escape successfully. Chu Ning, who rushed over later, tried to persuade him. Emperor Zhaowen placed his hands behind his back and didn't say anything as he stared at Blessing Palace closely. No one knew what he was worried about. Upon seeing this, Chu Ning didn't say anything else as he turned around and rushed to the front, leading the Imperial guards to strengthen the defense. At this moment, Elder Zong Yi finally crossed the flames and rushed into the main hall. The moment he entered, he saw someone coming out from the ground not far away. It was Situ Xingqian. Elder Zong Yi was elated and immediately rushed over. Xingqian. When Situ Xingqian heard this familiar voice, she immediately looked up. Elder Zhong Yi. Elder Zhong Yi then saw the bloodstains on her face and body, and his expression changed drastically. What happened to you? When he walked closer, he then realized that not only was Situ Xingqian's force sealed, but her shoulders and ankles were also injured. At this moment, she couldn't even walk normally. Situ Xingqian's eyes were bloodshot and filled with deep hatred. It's Chu Luwe. She was the one who stole my things and injured me to this extent. Elder Zhong Yi, you must avenge me. Elder Zhong Yi's heart ached terribly. Don't worry. When we get out of here, I won't let her off. Situ Xingqian was suddenly stunned and suddenly grabbed his shoulders. No. She just came out from below. You should have seen her. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 432. Elder Zhong Yi knitted his brows. She came out, but I didn't see anyone just now. An ominous feeling rose in Situ Xingqian's heart. You really didn't see her? Then what about now? Is she still hiding somewhere here? This place has already become a sea of fire. With her own abilities, how can Chu Luwe successfully escape from this place without a sound? As she spoke, she agitatedly grabbed Elder Zhong Yi's arm. Elder Zhong Yi's heart ached when he saw her frantic and crazy expression. I wonder how much torture Xingqian went through inside for her to become like this. He comforted her. Xingqian, don't be anxious. Let's leave this place first. We'll talk about the rest later. Definitely not. Situ Xingqian screamed shrilly. She took that wooden box. I spent so much effort to get this thing from the Empress. How can I let Chu Luwe snatch it away just like that? I'm definitely indignant. Elder Zhong Yi knitted his brows and asked, What wooden box? Is it very important? Situ Xingqian took a deep breath in. She didn't tell anyone about the wooden box and kept it carefully. Even when she asked Father and Elder Zhong Yi for help this time, she only said that Rongjin was the fake Heaven's chosen son and that she was implicated. Facing Elder Zhong Yi's question, she instantly felt guilty. Why, yes, it's more important. You must help me. Elder Zhong Yi surveyed the surroundings, and his expression was tense. But Emperor Jiawen and the rest are already here, and there will be more and more people. The later it takes, the harder it will be for us to leave. Also, I don't know who set this fire on purpose. We must get out of here as soon as possible. If not, your body alone won't be able to take it. He was very strong, but it wasn't easy for him to bring Situ Xingqian out in her current state. Besides, he hid his identity this time. If Emperor Jiawen and the rest knew who he was, and the news spread to Mingyue Tianshan, he would definitely be in trouble. Xingqian, don't worry. Since you know that it was Chu Luwe who stole your things, you'll have the chance to snatch them back in the future. Then, he carried Situ Xingqian on his back and planned to find an opportunity to rush out. Situ Xingqian was in a dilemma, but she knew that this was the best choice given the current situation, so she could only accept it. A silver barrier instantly enveloped the two of them. The light flickered and covered most of their figures. From the outside, it was impossible to see who was inside. With a tap of his foot, Elder Zhong Yi instantly charged out of the greenish-white sea of fire and into the air. They're out. Suddenly, a cry of surprise came from the besieging crowd. Several figures immediately chased after him. Emperor Jiawen closely stared at the unity boundary. Even though he couldn't see their faces, he could vaguely see that there were two people inside. His heart sank. One of them must be Situ Xingqian. Stop them at all costs. Emperor Jiawen ordered. Chi. Countless sharp arrows flew out, but they were all blocked by the silver barrier in the end. But just as they were about to escape, a figure suddenly appeared. They were blocking their way. When Elder Zhong Yi saw that person's face, his expression immediately turned solemn. It's actually Yi Zhiding. The next moment, the other party's words completely stunned him. Long time no see. How have you been? Yi Zhiding recognized me? Thoughts flashed across Elder Zhong Yi's mind. I've only met Yi Zhiding a few times, and the other party hasn't even seen my face. How can he confirm my identity? Yi Jiding smiled as he waved the fan in his hands. Since you're here, why don't you sit down and have a drink? Elder Zhongyi guessed that Yi Jiding was just bluffing. He didn't even plan to reply as he crazily circulated the force in his body. In an instant, the pressure on the barrier became even stronger. It then rapidly flew to the side. Elder Ye's smile didn't change as he waved his wrist, and the fan was instantly flung out. Hua! The moment it flew out, the fan actually fell apart and transformed into numerous white feathers that flew toward Elder Zhongyi and Situ Xingqian. The sound of the feathers piercing through the air was heard. In the blink of an eye, those white feathers actually flew to the surroundings of the barrier. He was completely surrounded. Elder Zhongyi immediately felt a strong suppression coming toward him. The surrounding space also gradually became heavy and stagnant. Even their speed started to slow down. Elder Zhongyi was shocked. Yi Jiding's fan is actually so powerful. At this moment, one of the white feathers suddenly pierced forward. Chew! The sound of something breaking was heard. Then, Elder Zhongyi was shocked to see that a crack had appeared on the silver barrier around him. A white feather slowly pierced in. He immediately wanted to repair it, but it was already too late. The next moment, that white feather suddenly dissipated. The entire barrier also instantly transformed into countless rays of light and scattered in all directions. The veil hat on his head was also crushed by this terrifying force. But just as the two of them were about to be exposed to the crowd, Elder Yi suddenly shouted, "Stop! Collect!" The moment he said this, the white feathers instantly multiplied and connected with each other in layers. They completely covered Elder Zhongyi and Situ Xingqian's figures. Such a huge commotion happened in the palace, so it naturally couldn't be hidden. Very quickly, countless pairs of eyes in the Imperial city looked in that direction. In the dark night, only the fire that shot into the sky was eye-catching and shocking. Quite a few people started to secretly guess. Did something happen in the palace? During this period of time, the Imperial city really wasn't peaceful. After just a few days, the Empress passed away, Rongjin was deposed, and even the palace was burning. The entire Imperial city's atmosphere seemed to become much heavier as a result. In the darkness, something seemed to be moving. It was unsettling. At this point, Chu Yue's room was completely silent. After asking that question, Qi Han fell silent. Chu Liyue quietly looked at him. She wasn't suspecting Qi Han. If not, she wouldn't have directly admitted her identity. However, Qi Han clearly didn't explain some things clearly. Even if what he said previously was reasonable, he just coincidentally followed Mu Qinghe here and found her by following the clues. But if he didn't know something, how could he be so sure that a young girl from a declining family in country Yaochan would be the high and mighty princess back then? Besides, even fewer people knew that she wanted to snatch the things in Situ Xingqian's hands. Could it be that Qi Han found out all of this by himself? Mu Qinghe also suspected me, and the two of them even interacted quite a bit. But because of her completely different appearance and body, as well as her impeccable identity, he couldn't confirm it for a long time. How did Qi Han find out? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 433. Qi Han knew that he could not hide it anymore. After thinking for a while, he finally opened his mouth. After thinking for a while, he finally said, "Your Highness, this news came from Zhen Bao Pavilion." Chu Liyue was stunned. Second Master Yin? Qi Han nodded and then shook his head. Chu Liyue suddenly understood. Did the head of Zhen Bao Pavilion order Second Master Yin to pass this news to you? A look of surprise flashed across Qi Han's eyes. He did not expect her to figure it out so quickly. However, Her Highness has always been intelligent, so it's not strange that she could think of this. I went to Zhenbao Pavilion to buy herbs before. Later on, I found a letter in the box they sent. That letter, Chu Liyue understood. I see. If it's that person, it's not strange. This person has a mysterious background and is very resourceful. Country Yao Qin's Imperial Mausoleum is almost completely under his control, let alone others. But if he deliberately told Qi Han this, doesn't it mean that he already knows my identity? Chu Luiwei asked. What about the letter? Qi Han said, that letter was specially treated. After I opened it and read it, I burned it. Chu Luiwei felt a little regretful. The other party was obviously very cautious and didn't want to leave any traces. Qi Han glanced at her carefully. Your Highness, I didn't tell you before because I didn't want you to worry. I originally planned to tell you after I found out that person's identity. In this world, other than the 13 you guards, there's only one other person who knows Her Highness' true identity. In fact, he even found out before they did. After Qi Han received the news, he felt very conflicted. On the one hand, he was overjoyed and excited that Chu Luiwei might be Her Highness. On the other hand, he was secretly worried that the other party would use this to do something that would harm Her Highness. Chu Luiwei thought for a moment, smiled faintly, and shook her head. You want to find out his identity? I'm afraid it's a little difficult. Also, since he already knows and told you, there's nothing to worry about. He has helped me so many times. If he wanted to deal with me, why would he need to spend so much effort? That person's strength and background are both extremely strong. From today onwards, don't waste any more time and energy investigating him. Qi Han was a little surprised. Just who was that person to make His Highness so fearful? And, judging from His Highness' tone, he seems to be somewhat familiar with that person. Your Highness knows that person? No, I don't. Chu Luiwei said straightforwardly. She actually wanted to know the identity of the first master more than anyone else, but the other party clearly didn't want her to know, so why should she waste her energy? When it was time to know, he would know. Since Chu Luiwei had said so, Qi Han naturally did as he was told. Where are the other members of the 13 you guard? Do they know me? They're not in country Yao Chun, but we've always been in contact. But I haven't told them about you. Before personally confirming His Highness's identity, he would not reveal it without permission. Chu Luiwei smiled with satisfaction. Well done. You're still as cautious as ever. She had no choice but to acknowledge Qi Han today. The 13 U guards were still loyal to her, and they were a huge help to her. However, the fewer people who knew about her identity, the better. Don't let them know about this first. When the time is right, I'll tell them personally. Qi Han immediately replied, Yes, Your Highness. After straightening out all these matters, Chu Luiwei felt much better. Last question. Her slender and fair fingers tapped lightly on the table as she asked, enunciating each and every word. Did Mu Qinghe betray me? Zhongyi, we're both smart people. Let's not beat around the bush. Inside the palace, Elder Zhongyi and Situ Xingchen were trapped in a cage made of white feathers, and they couldn't move at all. Elder Yi stood in front of the two of them and looked down at them from above. Emperor Zhaowen was standing at the side. Other than that, there was no one else. Elder Zhongyi didn't say anything, and Situ Xingchen seemed to have fainted due to excessive blood loss. I know a thing or two about Mingyue Tianshan's rules. If news of you barging into country Yao Qin's palace gets out, it won't be good, right? HM? Yi Zhiding still had a smile on his face, but the words he said made Elder Zhongyi break out in a cold sweat. Even though Mingyue Tianshan accepted disciples like the other clans, there was a bottom line. They didn't allow anyone to interfere with the country's affairs. Elder Zhongyi had committed a huge taboo. Not only would he be punished, but he might even be chased out of Mingyue Tianshan. Yi Zhiding, what exactly do you want? Shouldn't I be the one asking you that? It's the middle of the night, yet you came all the way here, barged into Blessing Palace, and even forcefully took her away. Speaking of which, isn't this all your fault? You're twisting the truth. Xingchen is country Xing Luo's eldest princess. You shouldn't have locked her up like this. Elder Zhongyi was even angrier when he said this. You tortured her until she doesn't look like a human anymore, yet you're blaming me? You're too much. Sai, you can't say that. Didn't you burn Blessing Palace just now? It would take a lot of effort to completely extinguish such a strong fire. Some of the palaces at the side also suffered the same fate. Elder Zhongyi was so angry that his beard trembled. I didn't set that fire. Elder Yi was dazed. Why not? Didn't you plan to set the fire and take her away in the chaos? Why would I use such a despicable method? If it weren't for that fire, I would have left with Xingqian long ago. You wouldn't have the chance to speak here. Looking at the agitated and angry Elder Zhong Yi, Yi Zhiding became suspicious as he exchanged glances with Emperor Jiawen. Could it be it really wasn't him? There's no harm in telling you. Today, there's someone who entered the Blessing Palace before this old man. Also, he even attacked Xingqian. He crippled one of her shoulders and one of her legs. When Elder Yi heard this, he immediately knitted his brows and carefully looked at Situ Xingqian, who had fainted on the floor. This injury wasn't caused by Emperor Jiawen. Emperor Jiawen also realized that something was amiss. He immediately stepped forward and stared at Elder Zhong Yi. Who is it? Elder Zhong Yi sneered. You all know this person too. Chu Luiwei. Impossible. Old man Yi denied it without thinking. How could this be done by his precious disciple? How is it impossible? This was something Xing Chun had said herself. Yi Zhiding, Chu Luiwei is your disciple, right? She came and left so smoothly today. Could it be that you're secretly helping her? Bullsh *T. Yi Zhiding directly swore. How can you believe Situ Xingqian's words? She had a grudge with my disciple long ago. She must have taken the chance to frame her. Elder Zhong Yi chuckled in disdain and looked at Emperor Jiawen. Xingqian also said that Chu Luiwei stole something from her. It's up to you whether to believe it or not. Digression. I'm going out for a while, and I'm updating at night. A better reading experience comes from my Yuan. Chapter 434. Hearing this, Elder Yi thought that this was bad. Didn't His Majesty also want to find something from Situ Xingqian? Since Zhong Yi said this, he might be suspicious. As expected, he turned around and saw Emperor Jiawen knitting his brows as if he were suspicious. Elder Yi immediately asked, Zhong Yi, why are you here? Zhong Yi, since this is the case, tell me what Luiwei stole from Situ Xingqian. Emperor Jiawen also held his breath. Zhong Yi was stumped. Situ Xingqian didn't even have the time to tell me. However, I'm sure that it's what Emperor Jiawen wants from Situ Xingqian when he locked her up. His eyes sparkled as he looked at Emperor Jiawen. Emperor Jiawen, you should know best what she stole, right? Elder Yi sneered. Zhong Yi clearly doesn't know. He might even be making it up. Emperor Jiawen kept quiet for a while and glanced at the unconscious Situ Xingqian. I'll talk to her about this personally when she wakes up. Elder Zhong Yi immediately became alert. What do you mean? I mean that before the matter is investigated, I'll have to trouble Elder Zhong Yi and Situ Xingqian to stay here for a while. Oh, right. Rongjin and Situ Xingqian's wedding is being prepared. As Situ Xingqian's elder, it's good for you to attend as well. Then, Emperor Jiawen raised his feet and planned to leave. Rong Xiao, how dare you? Elder Zhong Yi was stunned by his words. In a moment of desperation, he directly shouted Emperor Jiawen's name. Who is that Rongjin? How can he be worthy of Xingqian? If you insist, don't blame me for being rude. Emperor Jiawen stood still and sneered. I'm calling you Elder Zhong Yi on account of Mingyue Tianshan. However, this doesn't mean that I'm afraid of you. You're not the only strong person in Mingyue Tianshan. Elder Zhong Yi's chest tightened. You've caused such a huge commotion tonight, so you'll definitely attract a lot of attention. Elder Zhong Yi, you're a smart person. If you're willing to cooperate, I'll take it that nothing happened today. But if you don't agree, don't blame me for being merciless. One Situ Yin wasn't enough. Did they think that with Zhong Yi, everything would be fine? Elder Yi stroked his beard. I remember that it has indeed been a period of time since I went to Mingyue Tianshan. Looks like I should find some time to go back and pay him a visit. Elder Zhong Yi was so angry that his face turned red. He never thought that he would be threatened by Emperor Jiawen and Yi Zhiding. However, this was indeed his weakness. He couldn't bear the punishment of Mingyue Tianshan. If he forced his way through, it wasn't like he couldn't leave this place. But in that case, only Situ Xingqian would be left here. He was truly worried. Thus, After Elder Zhongye's expression changed several times, he finally gritted his teeth and admitted defeat. He glared at Elder Yi. Yi Zhiding, don't be smug too early. In this old man's opinion, that precious disciple of yours is very scheming. Who knows when I'll screw you over, and you won't even know. Elder Yi smiled and said, Zhongyi, as an outsider, you don't have to worry about the matters between us. If you have the time, you should take more care of Situ Xingqian. If this injury drags on for too long, it'll leave behind repercussions. Oh right, I haven't seen you for a few years, and your skills don't seem to have improved. You should take this chance to reflect properly. After Elder Yi said that, he immediately snapped his fingers. Countless white feathers instantly released a strong force and forcefully separated the two of them. Then they quickly gathered. Elder Yi, I'm afraid we'll have to trouble you these few days, said Emperor Joan. Elder Yi nodded. Situ Xingqian was still manageable, but Elder Zhongyi, only Elder Yi could suppress him. Elder Yi waved his hands. I've long found him an eyesore, so I'll take my revenge this time. But what do you think of what he said previously? Emperor Joan hesitated for a while and finally said honestly, I think it might be possible. Elder Yi knitted his brows. Does this mean that your majesty really suspects Liu Yu? Emperor Joan smiled bitterly and shook his head. I have no choice. Others don't know how important that thing is, but you know it best, Elder Yi. I'm not doing this for myself, but for the entire Yao Chun. Elder Yi thought for a while. Why don't I go and ask him directly? Emperor Joan thought carefully and instantly felt that this seemed to be the best choice. I've always liked Chu Luiyue. On one hand, she's Rongxiu's fiancée now. If I touch her, Rongxiu definitely won't be willing. On the other hand, there's also Mu Qinghe. Then, I'll have to trouble you, Elder Yi. The fire in the palace burned for the entire night. It was only completely extinguished when the sun rose the next morning. The entire Blessing Palace had been completely burned down, and even the surrounding halls had become ruins. Quite a few palace servants had also lost their lives. It was rumored that the Blessing Palace had not been maintained for a long time, so it accidentally caught fire and caused this fire. Actually, anyone with eyes would know that the greenish-white fire wasn't an ordinary fire. It was most likely caused by phosphor powder. Ordinary people didn't even have this thing. It was obvious that this matter had deep implications. However, since the palace had already given an explanation, nobody would be so insensible as to investigate further. However, the Blessing Palace used to be Rong Jin's residence. Now that he was just crippled, such a fire started. It was hard not to think too much. This time, he clearly didn't have a chance to turn things around. Princely Mansion. Early in the morning, Eunuch Min personally came over and said that His Majesty had summoned Rongxiu to the palace. Everyone in Princely Mansion was very surprised. His Majesty had always thought highly of Rongxiu. Considering that his body wasn't well, he rarely let him enter the palace. Today, this meeting came out of the blue. However, Rongxiu didn't seem to think too much. After simply packing up, he put on a black cloak and followed Eunuch Min into the palace. Emperor Joan was waiting in the Imperial study. Father, when he saw Rongxiu enter and wanted to bow, Emperor Joan immediately said, "There's no need for that. You don't have to be so formal. I called you here today because I have a few things to ask you." Rongxiu's jade-like face was as gentle as usual. "I'll tell you everything I know." Emperor Joan opened his mouth, but he hesitated in his heart. Rongxiu was his most beloved son. For so many years, he felt very guilty that he couldn't accompany Rongxiu by his side. Hence, after Rongxiu came back, he had been thinking of ways to make it up to him. Asking him this question now, it's unavoidably inappropriate. Rongxiu quietly stood there as if he didn't see Emperor Joan's dilemma. After a while, Emperor Joan finally clenched his teeth and made up his mind. He asked, "Rongxiu, when the palace was on fire last night, something went missing. Someone said that it was Liu Yu who did it. What do you think?" Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IUN. Chapter 435. If other people were here and heard this, they would definitely be shocked. This matter has a lot of implications, yet Emperor Jiawen directly asked about it. This shows how much he trusts Rong Xiao. Rong Xiao widened his eyes, and shock flashed across his eyes. Father, did you call me here just for this? Emperor Jiawen looked at him solemnly and didn't say anything. Rong Xiao's lips curved up slightly, and a light flashed across his eyes. Father, are you suspicious of you? Emperor Jiawen rubbed his glabella. Rong Xiao, you've always been the smartest. He had to admit that Elder Zong Ye's words did make him waver. Last night, he almost didn't sleep well for the entire night as he kept thinking about this. Why to have it be Chu Luiyue out of so many people? Besides, judging from Chu Luiyue's various shocking performances during this period of time, she might really be hiding some secrets. Even though Elder Yi had already promised to personally ask Chu Luiyue, he was still worried. However, Chu Luiyue's identity was special, so he couldn't and wasn't willing to touch her easily. Hence, he could only ask Rong Xiao to come. Rong Xiao thought for a moment and suddenly said, There's a problem. Father, you don't seem to know about it. Emperor Jiawen sat up slightly. Rong Xiao still had a smile on his face, but there was a playful look between his brows. Situ Xingqian. She admired me for many years. Emperor Jiawen was instantly dazed. Very quickly, he understood something. Could it be that Situ Xingqian is especially hostile towards Chu Luiyue because of this? Emperor Jiawen slowly knitted his brows. Even so, she shouldn't purposely frame you. After all, she already had a marriage agreement with Rong Jin. What good does it do her to provoke Chu Luiyue? Rong Xiao's smile deepened, but it was tainted with a layer of coldness. Imperial father knows best what is going on with the engagement between her and Imperial brother. Emperor Jiawen fell into deep thought. I don't know if father still remembers that I went to the arena on the last day of the Qing Jiao competition. Emperor Jiawen nodded. Of course I do. That day, I originally wanted to ask you for help, but I met Situ Xingqian off stage. This son inadvertently discovered that her sleeves were embroidered with cloud patterns that were almost exactly the same as this son's. Rong Xiao's tone was slightly cold. Emperor Jiawen's heart thumped. In the past, Rong Xiao really loved that strange cloud pattern. Many of his clothes were embroidered with that pattern. Maybe it's just a coincidence? After I returned that day, I thought about it and felt a little uncomfortable, so I ordered the servants in the manor to burn all the clothes with that cloud pattern. Emperor Jiawen's expression changed. He had some recollection of this incident, but he didn't pay much attention to it back then. He just thought that Rong Xiao wanted to throw all the clothes away because he had just recovered from serious illness and wanted to change his mood. He didn't expect this to be the reason behind it. That day, Situ Xingqian also arrived outside Princely Mansion and saw this scene. After leaving, she went to a remote alley and personally killed a few cultivators. She dismembered their corpses and chopped them into a pile of mush. Only then did she stop. Rong Xiao spoke slowly, but the content made one's heart skip a beat. Father, do you think that this is also a coincidence? Emperor Jiawen finally couldn't sit still and suddenly stood up. Where did you find out about this? Rong Xiao calmly smiled. Father, if I don't even know who went to Princely Mansion and what kind of attitude they had toward me in the Imperial City, how can I continue living? Emperor Jiawen looked at him with a complicated gaze and didn't say anything for a while. Yeah, I almost forgot. Even though Rong Xiao's body was weak, he was very smart. He had stayed in Minghua Tianshan for so many years. If he didn't even have this bit of ability, it would really disappoint him. Those few people usually hang around the various casinos and brothels in the Imperial City, and they usually attract a lot of hate. After they died, nobody cared about them. This incident was suppressed just like that. However, if you want to confirm it, it's very easy. You don't have to say anything. I believe you. Emperor Jiawen tiredly waved his hands and leaned against the chair. Rong Xiao kept quiet. The room fell into silence once again. Emperor Jiawen's thoughts were in turmoil. Anyone would be able to tell that something was wrong with this matter. For so many years, Situ Xingqian had always been high and mighty, gentle and elegant in everyone's eyes. But from this incident, it was obvious that she wasn't like that at all. In actual fact, after interacting with Situ Xingqian these few days, he already had this feeling in his heart. However, he didn't expect her to be even more vicious than he imagined. Linking all of these incidents together, many doubts were instantly resolved. This means that Situ Xingqian purposely targeted Lu Yu several times because her love turned into hatred. In this case, there would be a logical explanation for Situ Xingqian's involvement in Rongzhan's incident and her accusation of Chu Luyue for no reason. Rongxiu lightly smiled. I didn't say that. Father, you have your own judgment of who's right and who's wrong. Emperor Zhouwen opened his eyes and looked at Rongxiu with a deep gaze. I didn't expect that the first time you chose to confess to me was because of Chu Luyue. By saying all of this, Rongxiu was undoubtedly admitting that he had his own power in the Imperial City. He was far from being as aloof from worldly affairs as he had shown before. He definitely knew that this was a huge taboo for emperors. Aren't you worried that I'll be wary of you? Asked Emperor Zhouwen word for word. The sunlight shone in from the window and reflected in Rongxiu's eyes. He said, I'm just choosing the more important option after weighing the two options. And I'm his most important and only choice. Almost at the same time, Chu Luyue was waiting for Elder Yi in her yard. So many things happened the night before. So Situ Xingqian would definitely point me out and expose everything to Emperor Zhouwen. Thus, I was already prepared. However, I didn't expect it to be my mentor. Chu Luyue smiled and went up to him. Mentor, what brings you here? Elder Yi looked at her and suddenly asked in shock. When did you break through and become a rank 3 warrior? If I didn't remember wrongly, didn't this girl just become a stage 2 warrior during the Qing Jiao competition? Why did she become so fast? Moreover, the aura on her body seemed to be different from before. If Elder Yi carefully checked Chu Liyue's Yuan Meridian, he would know that this slight change was caused by the upgrade of her Yuan Meridian. Chu Liyue's eyes curved into crescents. I just broke through 2 days ago. I learned quite a lot at Taiyin Academy's library, so I tried to break through recently. As expected, I succeeded. Elder Yi thought about it and felt that it made sense. He had long known that Chu Luyue had a lot of force in her body, so it was only a matter of time before she broke through. You're indeed my disciple. Huh. Upon seeing Elder Ye's happy face, Chu Liyue's lips curled up, and she seemingly reminded him unintentionally. Why are you here today? Is there a reason why you came to find me today? Elder Ye's laughter suddenly stopped. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 436. Actually, he wasn't willing to make this trip. Chu Luyue was his only disciple, and he couldn't wait to dote on her, let alone question her. But if he didn't ask, he wouldn't be able to answer to Emperor Zhouwen. After much thought, it was more suitable for him to do it. Elder Yi coughed. Girl, where were you last night? Chu Luyue blinked. Of course I was at home. If not, where else could I be? Old Mr. Yi carefully observed her expression. He always knew that Chu Luyue was stronger than what she showed. At the very least, she was above his standards in terms of medicine refinement. He knew very well that this girl had many secrets, but he didn't want to suspect her because of this. You should know that there was a fire in the palace yesterday, right? Chu Luyue nodded and smiled. It's hard not to know about such a big fire, Mentor. Elder Yi thought for a while and finally asked directly, what happened last night? What happened yesterday? Did it have anything to do with you? Chu Luyue blinked. What do you mean? Elder Yi stared at her closely, and after a while, he couldn't help but slap his thigh. I knew that Situ Xingqian did it on purpose. Tell me, what exactly happened? Why did she want to kill you? Chu Luyue was speechless. Even though she knew that Elder Yi would side with her, this was too straightforward. Chu Luyue lightly coughed. It's a long story. Make it short. He still has to rush back to discuss this with Emperor Zhouwen. Oh, Chu Luyue shrugged. She thinks that I snatched her man. Elder Ye's expression instantly became strange. and he was even a little speechless. Rongxiao, Chu Luiwei nodded. Sidu Xingqian personally told me last night. How could it be wrong? Elder Yi suddenly took a step back and sized up Chu Luiwei. Minter, what are you looking at? Asked Chu Luiwei strangely. Elder Yi suddenly chuckled. No wonder. No wonder. So, it's because of this that Sidu Xingqian kept trying to drag you down. Chu Luiwei's eyes twitched. For some reason, she seemed to hear a whiff of smugness. Enough. Master already knows. Just focus on your cultivation at home. There was no need to care about anything else. Old Man Yi said and turned to leave. Suddenly, he turned his head and asked, By the way, did Mu Qinghe say when she was leaving? Mu Qinghe's eyes moved slightly, but she quickly suppressed the slight ripples and shook her head gently. Not yet, but it should be soon. Mu Qinghe had gained nothing from the trip to the Imperial Mausoleum, so she definitely wouldn't stay for long. Old Man Yi nodded. His expression became more serious as he warned, Going to the Tianling dynasty is a great opportunity. You must make good use of it. But the rest of his words were stuck in his throat. Elder Yi hesitated for a while and finally swallowed them back down. If you want to leave, you must inform Master in advance. Chu Luiwei nodded. Today was the day of the Empress's funeral. Originally, everything was well prepared, but the sudden fire in the Blessing and Harmony Palace caused everyone to be in a state of panic. Even though Emperor Jiawen was very sad, he still decided to keep the Empress's funeral simple. In the end, only the noble consort's funeral was held. Emperor Jiawen collapsed from excessive worry, so he couldn't attend the Empress's funeral. Rongjin suffered consecutive blows and was bedridden. He didn't even leave Crown Prince Mansion's doors. Oh, now that the plaque had been removed, it couldn't be considered Crown Prince Mansion anymore. In the end, only Prince Ping, Rongqi, and Rongjun went. But out of the two of them, one had been a rich man's son for many years and didn't have any real power, while the other had a shattered pearl of essence and was completely useless. Even if they were added together, they didn't have much of a presence. As for the Xi family, only a few people went. The Empress's entire funeral was very simple. It started in a hurry and ended in a hurry. At this point, everyone could tell that Emperor Jiawen did this on purpose. As the Empress, she was the country's mother. After her death, she should hold a national funeral to show her status. But now, the funeral wasn't even as grand as a consort's. If the Empress didn't do something to anger His Majesty when she was alive, why would she have such an ending after her death? All sorts of rumors circulated on the streets, but they all silently disappeared in the end. Not long later, the crowd threw the Empress's death to the back of their minds and started discussing another matter. The Crown Prince position is empty, and His Majesty will definitely choose a new Crown Prince from the few princes. Emperor Jiawen didn't have many sons, but there weren't many who were suitable to be the Crown Prince. After much discussion, the crowd finally realized that the best candidate was the third prince, Rongjio. In terms of capabilities, he entered the Northwest Army and fought on the battlefield for many years. He had many outstanding military achievements. In terms of age, he was in his prime. He was also the second-ranked prince after Rongjin. Other than his low birth status, he had almost no flaws. Almost everyone was certain that Rongjio would become the new crown prince. But the current Rongjio wasn't so optimistic. This was because he had already been locked up in the residence for a few days. The Empress's funeral had already ended, but Father still hadn't let him go. This inevitably made Rongjio worried. At this point, he suddenly heard that Father urgently summoned Rongjin into the palace. It seemed like the two of them had talked for a long time in the Imperial study. The longer he waited, the more uneasy Rongjio felt. Finally, on this day, someone came to the palace. The Empress was killed by the third prince, Rongjio. From today onwards, he will be locked up in the heavenly prison and await his punishment. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from AI.net. Chapter 437. A stone stirred up 1,000 ripples. Rongjio was originally the most suitable crown prince among the few princes, and many people had already secretly started thinking about how to get close to him. They didn't expect him to be imprisoned for such a heinous crime overnight. At that moment, the entire imperial city changed. I heard that the third prince's birth mother, noble Lady Ying, was harmed by the empress back then. He held a grudge for many years, so he took action against her. Who knows about the harem? But even if it's true, the third prince is too impulsive. As long as he can become the crown prince, he can do whatever he wants. Why did he have to take action at this juncture? After the Northwest Army came back, His Majesty didn't let him go back for a long time, so he's naturally anxious. Besides, the Empress's funeral was so simple. Can't you see the problem? Even if His Majesty hates the Empress, he can't let the third prince kill her. He deserves it. These few princes are either crippled, locked up, or sick. If this continues, there's nothing to pick on. When Chu Liwei walked past the streets, she could vaguely hear some whispers. Even though they weren't allowed to talk about it openly, it was hard for people not to notice with so many things happening in the palace. When she arrived at Princely Mansion, she realized that the security here was obviously much tighter. Chu Liwei raised her eyebrows slightly. The entire imperial city was in chaos, and it wasn't easy for Princely Mansion to stay out of it. Seeing Chu Liwei, the guards at the door hurriedly welcomed her. "Ms. Liu, you're finally here. His Highness has been waiting for you for a while." Chu Liu's lips curled up slightly as she walked in. When she saw Rongjio, he was taking a nap in the backyard's bamboo forest. On the stone table were 2 cups of freshly brewed tea and a half-finished chess game. A light breeze blew over, and a few green bamboo leaves landed on Rongjio's snow-white robe, making him look even colder and more noble. "Your Highness, you knew I was coming?" Chu Liwei brushed away the leaves in front of his eyes and walked over. Rongjio picked up the porcelain cup that was as clear as jade. A white mist rose in spirals, making it almost impossible to see the expression in his deep eyes. His scarlet lips curled up slightly, and his smile was as gentle and calm as ever. "This is the tea that I personally brewed. Let's see how it compares to yours." Chu Liwei sat down and picked up another cup. A strong fragrance wafted over, lingering at the tip of his nose, refreshing his mind. Chu Liwei took a sip. After the faint bitterness, there was a sweet aftertaste. She nodded honestly. "Your Highness' cooking skills are much better than mine." Compared to him, the ones she had picked up were really not worth mentioning. Rongjio smiled and shook his head. "But this prince only likes yours ginger tea." "The tea is good, but I don't like it." Chu Liwei glared at him. "Your Highness is still in the mood to joke at a time like this." "That's exactly what I was thinking." Rongjio raised his brows. "Also, what do you mean by this time?" Chu Liwei narrowed his eyes. "The entire imperial city is in a mess, but only this person can leisurely brew tea and play chess in his own backyard. He's really calm." She shook her head and cut to the chase. "You already knew that His Majesty was going to do something to the third prince?" Previously, Rongjio had mentioned that someone wanted to frame Rongjio and blame him for the Empress's death. However, Chu Liwei never expected that person to be Emperor Jiawen. No matter what, Rongjio is his biological son. His actions are no different from sending Rongjio to his death. Rongjio's expression didn't change, and his lips curled up into a casual smile. Since you know what's going on, why do you have to ask me?" "This is an admission." Chu Liwei knitted his brows and was still confused. "But why did His Majesty do this? If he didn't want Rongjio to inherit the throne, he had many ways. At the very least, Rongjio was trapped in the imperial city and had almost all of his military power confiscated. He couldn't do anything. Besides, Rongjio had fought on the battlefield for many years and had many achievements. Even without his identity as a prince, his contributions were still significant. Why must Emperor Jiawen be so ruthless? His Majesty knows that the person who killed the Empress is Situ Xingqian. Until now, this news had been tightly sealed. Are you suspecting that father is siding with Situ Xingqian?" asked Rongjio with interest. Chu Liwei shook his head. Judging from the situation that night, Emperor Jiawen definitely didn't want to let Situ Xingchen off. He just wanted to get something from her. However, there's really no need to frame Rongjio for the Empress's death. She knew very well that the royal family was heartless, and she even had an unforgettable, painful memory. However, Emperor Jiawen clearly had other motives for doing this. Rongxiu smiled lightly. If he knows his place and is an idle prince in the Imperial city, Father naturally won't do anything to him. He can make Father decide to do this. Looking at his meaningful expression, Chu Luiyue suddenly understood something. Your Highness, you mean that the third prince, Rongxiu, placed a chess piece down. Pack! Chu Luiyue looked down, and his heart skipped a beat. Once this piece was placed, the originally deadlocked black and white chess pieces on the chessboard instantly broke the stalemate. They crazily fought each other. Rongxiu actually wants to rebel? If not, I really can't think of any other reason for Emperor Jiawen to do this. Your Highness, how did you know? Once Chu Luiyue asked this, he couldn't help but regret it. As long as Rongxiu wants to, he can know everything. However, Rongxiu's expression became strange. Chu Luiyue looked at his eyes and suddenly widened her eyes in shock as she thought of something. Could it be? Rongxiu looked at her with a deep gaze, and his lips suddenly curved up as he waved at her. You are come over. Chu Luiyue stood up in confusion and walked over. Rongxiu held her hand, pulled her into his embrace, and tightly hugged her as he bent down and kissed her. Chu Luiyue was taken aback, and her heart trembled slightly from his scorching aura. What's wrong with this person? Why is he so sudden? Why, Your Highness? Chu Luiyue pushed his shoulders, but he hugged her waist very tightly, as if he wanted to embed her in his embrace. Rongxiu only stopped when he kissed her until her limbs turned weak, and she melted into a puddle of spring water in his arms. He then switched to a light kiss. Chu Luiyue looked at him, and her eyes that were as bright as the night sky became moist, as if a pinch would overflow with sweetness. Rongxiu's eyes flashed, and he reached out to cover her eyes. He moved closer to her ear and said in a low and hoarse voice, as if something was rubbing against his heart, Don't look at this prince like that. Chu Luiyue's ears also heated up. Your Highness, you knows this prince best. Rongxiu suddenly couldn't help but bite her delicate earlobe. Chu Luiyue felt itchy, but her body went soft. Rongxiu buried his face in her neck and closed his eyes. She always knew what he was thinking, from the past to the present. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 438. Chu Luiyue naturally didn't know what Rongxiu was thinking. His hot breath landed on her neck and behind her ears, making her feel itchy. The breeze blew, and the bamboo forest swayed. Chu Luiyue instantly became much more awake. No wonder Rongxiu kept looking at the entire Imperial city's military strength distribution. It turns out that he had long been preparing for this day. Rongxiu had stayed in the Imperial city for a few months and didn't even leave the city. Now that he suddenly decided to rebel, someone was clearly adding fuel to the fire. And this person was Rongxiu. Your Highness, when did you start planning all this? Chu Luiyue couldn't help but ask. Rongxiu's low voice sounded by her ear. Oh, it's quite early. When did third brother go to the Northwest Army? His tone was casual and calm, as if this was just a small matter. Chu Luiyue was shocked and pushed him away. She looked back and stared at Rongxiu in disbelief with her black eyes. Your Highness, you mean, but he didn't ask to go. Chu Luiyue's words stopped abruptly. Suddenly, an extremely absurd idea appeared in her mind. Rongxiu saw her rare shocked look, and a smile flashed across his eyes. It's not easy to see her reveal such an expression. Seeing his expression, Chu Luiyue opened her mouth, but she didn't say a word. What else do I have to say? He's clearly admitting it. All these years, Rongxiu's every move was actually under Rongxiu's control. No matter if it was his determination to join the army after being bullied by the Empress and the Crown Prince, his outstanding military achievements, or his current situation where he had nowhere to go. It was clearly all in Rongxiu's plan. But It's dangerous to nurture a tiger. Now, Rongzhou wants to go against Emperor Jiawen, but he'll definitely become Rongxiu in the end. Chu Yue's heart was in turmoil, and she finally couldn't help but ask, "Did you tell His Majesty that the third prince was going to rebel?" Rongxiu's brows moved slightly. "You're underestimating Father. Since third Imperial brother had done this, how could Imperial Father not have noticed? I don't have much to do with this matter. I'd be a fool if I believed you." Chu Luiwei cursed in her heart. Perhaps Rongxiu also had a part to play in Rongzhou's plan to attack. Third prince doesn't know about this? Rongxiu raised his brows slightly. "What do you think?" Chu Luiwei gasped and slapped her forehead. "My brain short-circuited too. If Rongxiu knew it, the Northwest Army's 5,000 elites are about to reach the Imperial City." Rongxiu gently caressed her slender and soft waist as he nonchalantly said, "As for when they'll fight, it depends on Father and third brother. According to Rongzhou's personality, they shouldn't wait for long. Besides, Father will punish Rongzhou in the next few days." Chu Luiwei put her hand down, opened her eyes, and looked at him. "Isn't all of this in your hands, Your Highness? Today, everything is under Rongxiu's control." Rongxiu chuckled. "If I didn't hear wrongly, are you praising me?" Chu Luiwei was speechless. Is the praise more important than the matter itself? Country Yao Chun is about to change. However, Rongxiu didn't seem to care about it. Looking at her shocked and confused face, Rongxiu laughed for a while before finally saying, Don't worry. Lord Chuning will be leaving the Imperial capital with a group of people today to investigate some matters. If the Imperial Guards and the Northwest Army fight, Lord Chuning won't be implicated. Did he purposely send Father away for me?" Her conversation with Rongxiu contained too much joy. Chu Yue's mind was filled with thoughts, and she didn't know what to say for a moment. She looked at Rongxiu with a complicated gaze. This man was devilishly handsome, extremely talented, and terrifyingly scheming. But he just had to be so honest with her that she didn't know how to face him. He had plotted for so many years and played such a big game of chess, yet he told her so easily. "Your Highness, aren't you worried that I'll tell others about this?" asked Chu Luiwei with knitted brows. Rongxiu looked at her in shock, as if she had asked a very stupid question. Which woman in this world would put the man she loves in danger? Chu Luiwei was speechless. There doesn't seem to be anything wrong with this sentence, but why does it sound so strange? Chu Luiwei stuttered, and her usually eloquent tongue seemed to be in a knot at this point. After a while, she finally decided to give up and not harp on this matter. However, she still had the strangest and most important question. "Your Highness, why are you doing this?" One was his father, and the other was his brother. In their bones, the same blood flowed in their veins. Rongxiu's actions were equivalent to starting a fight between Emperor Jiawen and Rongxiu. A war was about to break out. No matter who won or lost in the end, what was the point to Rongxiu? Rongxiu thought for a moment and chuckled. "Oh, I just felt that it was too troublesome to fight for it, so I found someone to do it for me." Chu Luiwei was dazed. He did it for me. He's talking about fighting for the throne, right? How can he replace something like this? Besides, the most important thing is that if Rongxiu really wanted the throne, why did he have to pretend to be sick for so many years? According to Emperor Jiawen's love for him, as long as Rongxiu displayed his true abilities, just a small portion of his abilities, Emperor Jiawen would definitely make him the crown prince. Chu Luiwei actually wanted to ask, but for some reason, she had a strong feeling that it was best not to ask. Rongxiu must have his reasons for doing this. After reacting for a while, Chu Luiwei finally found her voice. "But if that's the case, won't the throne be the third prince's?" A faint smile appeared on Rongxiu's face, but there was an indescribable suppression in his eyes. He slowly said, Who do you think helped third brother contact the Northwest Army and made him take the last pill of confidence and decide to mobilize the army? Of course it's my people." Emperor Jiawen gathered all the officials to discuss Rongzhou's punishment. After an intense debate, they finally came to a conclusion. The third prince, Rongjio, has committed treason. He took the chance when Emperor Jiawen asked him to take care of the empress, harm the empress, and try to destroy the corpse. His crimes are utterly devoid of conscience, and the heavens cannot tolerate it. He will be beheaded at the Meridian Gate. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience that comes from Love Network. Chapter 439. Early in the morning, the Imperial city's streets and alleys were filled with people. Whether it was out of curiosity, pity, or some other reason, everyone rushed to the Meridian Gate. The execution ground was tightly guarded by armored Imperial guards. Rongjio had not been brought over, but the surroundings were already filled with people. It was very noisy. This third prince has made great contributions in the Northwest Army a few years ago. He's very impressive. Who would have thought that he would become a prisoner in the blink of an eye? His achievements are enough to intimidate the emperor. He hasn't even stepped out of the Imperial city's gates these few months. Isn't it obvious what the higher-ups are thinking? From what I see, the crime is fake and the execution is real. But among the remaining princes, the third prince is the most suitable candidate for the crown prince. Isn't it too heartless to do this? How much do we know about the palace? Anyway, that person is still in his prime. After a few more years, the princes below him will also grow up, right? It's a pity that the third prince's birth mother has already passed away and he doesn't have a high status. At this time, there's no one who can help him. The crowd discussed fervently, and they had different opinions about this matter. However, everyone knew that everything was already set in stone by now. Time passed bit by bit, and the sun gradually rose to the middle of the sky. Suddenly, the originally noisy crowd quietened down. The crowd split into two sides, and a path opened up. Everyone seemed to have sensed something, and they all looked over at the same time. A group of people on horses walked over. The person in front was the C family head, C. He was clearly here today to supervise the execution. Compared to the past, the current C looked much more haggard. His cheeks were deeply sunken, and his eyes were bloodshot. It was obvious that the things that happened during this period of time had a big impact on him. After all, the Empress, Si Huijing, was his biological sister. He had just finished the Empress's funeral, and he had to come here immediately after. He didn't even have time to rest. Si walked forward step by step. He could clearly feel the countless gazes around him landing on his body. But in actual fact, his body and mind were numb. Originally, he didn't want to come, but His Majesty had given the order, so he could only follow it. A prison wagon slowly followed behind him. The disheveled man in the metal cage was the current third prince, Rongjio, who was wearing a prisoner's uniform and had his hands locked. He was forced to kneel there with his head slightly lowered. His messy hair fell down and covered most of his face. However, everyone could still vaguely see his current expression, indifferent and cold. His body even carried a valiant aura that could only be obtained after experiencing life and death on the battlefield. In short, there was no trace of panic or despair. Around the prison cart, there were also Imperial guards following closely. However, all those people combined couldn't even compare to Rongjio's aura. Probably affected by some kind of emotion, the places where the prisoner carriage passed by became incomparably quiet. The people standing in front of him, even unconsciously, took a step back. This Third Highness, for some reason, looked a bit inexplicably scary. When they arrived at the execution ground, Ce raised his hand, and the prison cart finally stopped. "Bring him here." With an order, the Imperial guards at the side immediately went forward and brought Rongjio out of the metal cage. Two extremely sharp swords were pressed against Rongjio's neck as they brought him to the execution ground in the middle. From start to end, Rongjio's expression didn't change much. But when he stood still at the execution ground, he suddenly looked up and glanced in the direction of the palace as mockery flashed across his eyes. It seems like Father won't change his decision. Today he was determined to put him to death. Rongjio retracted his gaze and looked down to hide the murderous intent in his eyes. Unless it was his last resort, he actually didn't want to do this. However, he had been on the battlefield for many years and had experienced countless life and death situations. He didn't expect that he would end up with such an outcome. Anyone would feel hopeless if they were in his shoes. "Hurry up and kneel," yelled the person behind Rongjio impatiently as he harshly kicked Rongjio's knees. However, Rongjio didn't kneel down from the kick. His physical body was as hard as a piece of steel. Seeing that Rongjio didn't kneel down as he wanted, the man who kicked him was shocked. Rongjio slowly turned around and glanced at him. The man immediately felt guilty under her gaze, and an inexplicable trace of fear appeared in his heart. Then he frowned and hollered, "What? What are you looking at? Do you think you're the high and mighty third prince?" He's just a criminal on death row, yet he's still so arrogant when he's about to die. "Kneel down." That man gave the person beside him a look, and the two of them exerted their strength. The two long swords instantly slit Rongjio's neck, and red blood slowly seeped out. The last bit of hesitation in Rongjio's heart finally disappeared. He slightly bent his knees as if he was really going to kneel down. However, in the next moment, his body suddenly leaped up and kicked the two people closest to him. His actions were too fast, and the two of them didn't even have time to react before they were harshly kicked away by Rongjio. C immediately realized something and hollered, "Capture! Capture him!" Rongjio actually wants to escape. The surrounding crowd also reacted at this point and rushed forward. An enormous figure suddenly appeared above Rongjio's head. C looked over and was shocked. It was a fourth-grade fiend, a white thatched falcon. Voila! That white thatched falcon suddenly spread its wings. Rongjio flipped over and jumped onto it. "Go!" Following a clear cry, the white thatched falcon flapped its wings and flew into the sky. At this point, the surrounding crowd finally understood that it was Rongjio's fiend. When he was locked up in the prison, he didn't have anything else on him other than his prison clothes. But they actually forgot that he had his own fiend. Rongjio had been very low profile these few months in the Imperial city, so they actually forgot that he had such a trump card. Even though this white thatched falcon was a fourth-grade fiend, it was ferocious and had strong combat skills. It was almost considered the top among the fourth-grade fiends. The human and fiends figures quickly flew into the distance. C immediately said, "Prepare. Prepare your bows." The many Imperial guards immediately took out the bows on their backs and aimed at Rongjio in midair. However, right at this moment, a few figures suddenly charged out from the crowd, and they charged towards the Imperial guards. Choo-choo! Messy air-piercing sounds were heard, and many of them deviated from their original directions. They didn't even touch the edges of the white thatched falcon's wings. C looked at the people who suddenly rushed over in shock and anger, and he suddenly widened his eyes in shock. They actually took the initiative to use their killer move. They came prepared. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 440. The crowd instantly fell into chaos. Those people were wearing very normal clothes, and they looked no different from the commoners who were here to join in the fun. It was precisely because of this that their actions were especially sudden. C roughly glanced at them, and there were at least hundreds of them. These people were clearly here for Rongjio. More importantly, from the ruthless moves of these people, it was obvious that they were trained on the battlefield. C suddenly understood something and gasped. Rongjio actually mobilized the Northwest Army to save me. Didn't they say that he handed over his military power after returning to the Imperial city and didn't contact the Northwest Army again? What exactly is going on with these people's appearance? In just an instant, screams, weapons clashing, and the sound of sharp weapons piercing into flesh were all mixed together. Countless people screamed and escaped. C was about to chase after Rongjio when two people suddenly rushed over from the side and directly blocked his path. The next moment, they actually attacked before C did. Sing! C was forced into a chaotic battle. The two parties had just exchanged a few moves, and he knew that things were bad. These people all killed their way out of a pile of corpses. Even if their cultivation levels weren't as high as his, they were the best at killing people. Once they attacked, every move was fatal. There were no tricks at all. In the midst of the chaos, Ce looked around and realized that things were exactly as he had expected. The Imperial guards, who had the advantage in numbers, were gradually at a disadvantage. He flung something out of his sleeves without hesitation. Bang! A signal shot up to the sky. At the same time, Emperor Jiawen was reading something alone in the Imperial study. But after taking 2 glances, he stopped and rubbed his glabella. Calculating the time, it should be about time. Suddenly, Eunuch Min's anxious voice was heard from outside the door. Your Majesty! Your Majesty! Something happened. Emperor Jiawen's heart skipped a beat as he walked over and personally opened the door. He frowned and asked, what exactly happened? Eunuch Min was shocked as he hurriedly took a step back and knelt down. Your Majesty, the 3rd prince ran away. Emperor Jiawen's expression turned even colder. What do you mean he ran away? What is Ce doing? Where are the Imperial guards? Eunuch Min wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead and quickly said in a trembling voice, that's right. Your Majesty, someone has blended into the crowd and started fighting with the Imperial guards. They escorted the 3rd prince away. The ominous feeling in Emperor Jiawen's heart intensified. This is the Imperial capital. Who would help him like this? They seem to be the Northwest Army. Bang! Emperor Jiawen kicked Eunuch Min's heart. Trash! Eunuch Min fell to the ground with a dull pain in his chest. He spat out a mouthful of blood. However, Emperor Jiawen had already strode outside. Send more men immediately. Seal the city gates. Not only Rongjio, but we can't let anyone related to this incident go. Eunuch Min endured the pain and hurriedly followed. Yes. Emperor Jiawen's face darkened. As expected, Rongjio had already secretly contacted the Northwest Army. He had even made such preparations. He planned to escape from the execution ground. Previously, there were even people who wanted to make him the crown prince. What a joke. Rongjio was very ambitious. How could he be willing to be a prince with no real power? Once he became the crown prince, he might not be able to sit on the throne. Emperor Jiawen was walking forward when someone hurriedly rushed over and directly knelt in front of him. Your Majesty! Upon seeing this person, Emperor Jiawen's expression changed. If it weren't for something major, this person definitely wouldn't have appeared here. As expected, that person's next sentence made him feel like he was struck by lightning. Wei Lin led the Northwest Army soldiers here, and they're already 20 miles away from the Imperial capital's gate. They said that the 3rd prince had contributed greatly to the country of Yao Chun and had always been loyal to you. Now, you're listening to the slanderous words of a villain and want to execute him. This really hurt the hearts of countless soldiers guarding the borders. So, they're here to ask you to clear the 3rd prince's name. Emperor Jiawen's figure swayed. Northwest Army's Wei Lin aren't they Rongjio's men? How was this clearing Rongjio's name? They're clearly rebelling. This place is thousands of miles away from the borders, and it takes at least 3 to 4 days for a message to travel back and forth. However, the Imperial edict to kill Rongjio was only issued yesterday. These people came so quickly, which means that they arrived long ago. Now, they actually have the cheek to accuse me? Eunuch Min hurriedly went forward to support Emperor Jiawen, but Emperor Jiawen flung him away. The next moment, Emperor Jiawen harshly slapped the person kneeling in front of him. Pack! That man's face was instantly slapped to the side. His cheeks rapidly swelled up. However, he immediately bowed and kowtowed. Your Majesty, please calm down. It's all my fault. You actually only discovered such an important matter now? What use do I have for you? Emperor Jiawen's hand was completely numb from the slap, but his chest was still filled with anger, and his face was green. Your Majesty, those people seem to have come in batches. They only gathered again after all of them arrived. That's why I didn't discover them in time. What kind of place is the Imperial capital? We're in charge of guarding the city gates, so how dare we slack off? However, those people from the Northwest Army are too sneaky. We didn't even realize it previously. When we realized that something was amiss, it was already too late. How many people did they send? Asked Emperor Jiawen as he took a deep breath. Around 5,000. Emperor Jiawen panted. 5,000 Imperial guards are nothing to worry about. Where's Chu Ning? Get him to bring people over immediately. Your Majesty, did you forget that you just sent Lord Chu Ning out of the city yesterday? Reminded eunuch Min carefully. Emperor Jiawen was dazed. He then remembered that he seemed to have found some news related to the bronze vat outside the imperial capital, so he had already sent Chu Ning to investigate. They weren't even in the imperial capital now. Let Zhao Ming take over. And you, immediately gather the imperial guards. You must stop them outside the imperial capital's gates. There are more than 10,000 imperial guards, so it shouldn't be a problem to deal with 5,000 people. The man kneeling on the floor seemed to have seen through Emperor Jiawen's thoughts as he braced himself. Your Majesty, the imperial guards are scattered all over the imperial capital. It's already difficult to gather them immediately. The most important thing is that the people who came seem to be the Northwest Army's elites. It's not that I'm afraid, but I know too well how troublesome this situation is. How could a person who could survive on the battlefield be compared to these pampered imperial guards in the imperial capital? If there's no other way, the city gates will fall in no time. Digression, the plot is stuck, and it's very difficult to write. I'll go back and sort out the plot. Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from IUN. Chapter 441. It was early winter in the imperial city, and the wind was biting cold. Outside the city gates, the soldiers from both sides were in a standoff. Time passed bit by bit, and the afterglow shone down. Outside the city gates, 5,000 elites stood in formation, filled with a strong, murderous aura. After looking at them for a long time, one could almost smell the sand and blood mixed in the air. The imperial guards on the city walls were fully armed. A tall man dressed in black armor stood in the middle of the group. This person was the deputy commander of the imperial guards, Zhao Ming. Chu Ning was not around, so he took on the task at the last moment and became the commander of the imperial guards. His eyes were fixed on the front as he shouted in a deep voice, "Where is the Northwest Army's deputy general, Wei Lin?" His low and powerful voice instantly spread far and wide. A man in red armor took a step forward. "I'm here." It was an extremely muscular man who looked no more than 30 years old. He had a beard on his face and looked very fierce. Zhao Ming took a deep breath. Wei Lin was very famous in the Northwest Army. He was violent and strong. Moreover, he was a Stage 5 warrior who fought his way out on the battlefield. Just by himself, he could take on 100 people by himself, not to mention the thousands of soldiers behind him who were obviously not easy to deal with. Rongjiu was fully prepared this time. According to Yao Chen's laws, the deputy general can't leave the army without His Majesty's orders. He can't bring soldiers into the imperial city. Wei Lin, are you rebelling? Wei Lin laughed. Zhao Ming, it's fine if you're not strong enough, but it turns out that your brain is useless too. I've already said that this is not a rebellion. It's just that His Majesty's actions toward the third prince are unreasonable. He even hurt the hearts of the Northwest Army's soldiers. We're only here to help His Highness the third prince and to seek justice for ourselves. Zhao Ming was about to retort when he suddenly saw a commotion in the crowd opposite him. Then it suddenly split in the middle. A man walked out from the middle. He was wearing armor, and his face was solemn and majestic. It was Rongjiu. Zhao Ming's heart sank. Rongjiu indeed successfully escaped. After the riot at the execution ground, the imperial guards were collectively mobilized to search for Rongjiu's whereabouts in the entire imperial city. However, they did not find anything until he arrived. It turned out that Rongjiu had already left the imperial city during the chaos. At this time, the prison clothes and shackles on his body were long gone. He was dressed in martial attire and looked bloody and fierce. "Greetings, Your Highness." Wei Lin cupped his fists and bowed. The soldiers behind him immediately shouted in unison, "Welcome back, Your Highness!" Their shouts shook the heavens. After Rongjin was removed from his position, everyone thought that Rongjio would naturally be made the new crown prince. Who knew that not only did he not become the crown prince, but he even directly started a rebellion. However, anyone with a discerning eye could tell that Rongjio had long made preparations. If not, he wouldn't be able to gather the Northwest Army in such a short period of time. For a moment, the crowd couldn't tell if Emperor Jiawen let Rongjio down first or if Rongjio started the rebellion first. However, Chu Liwei didn't have time to care about all this at this point. This was because Mu Qinghe personally came to her residence. In the room, Chu Liwei slightly widened her eyes. What? Leave now? Mobile users, please browse and read. A better reading experience comes from Love Network. Chapter 442. Is there a problem? Asked Mu Qinghe coldly as she knitted her brows. The other side kept urging him to go back, and he couldn't delay any longer. Besides, the injuries he suffered in the Imperial Mausoleum had mostly healed over the past 2 days. Now is the best time to go back. That's not it. Chu Liwei thought for a moment. It's just that the Imperial City situation is a little special. Won't it seem strange if we leave now? The Northwest Army, led by Rongjio, has already started fighting with the Imperial Guards. It doesn't make sense for us to leave at this time. Besides, I already know that all of this is Rongjio's plan. How can I leave without seeing the results? Mu Qinghe lightly asked in return. Even if they start fighting, what does it have to do with us leaving? It's just a small fight. This small country, Yao Chun, isn't even as big as a state under me. Chu Liwei instantly had the urge to facepalm. A small fight? The deaths of thousands of people and a country's political power were just a small fight in Mu Qinghe's eyes. However, with his status, there doesn't seem to be anything wrong with saying this. The battles that Mu Qinghe had experienced were indeed much more dangerous and scary than this. No, Vice Admiral Mu, I think you've misunderstood me. Chu Liwei deliberated before speaking. I'm Prince Li's fiancé, so I'm considered part of the royal family. Now that something like this has happened, how can I just leave? At the very least, I have to wait until everything is settled. Mu Qinghe's expression turned even colder. Time is limited. Leave or stay. Choose one. Chu Liwei was in a dilemma. I must go to the Tianling dynasty. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. If I follow Mu Qinghe back, not only will I be able to do it openly, but I can also hide my identity better. Moreover, it was very likely that they would directly come into contact with Jiang Yuqing and the others. Without this layer of relationship, even if she broke through to the 7th stage, entered the Heaven's Canopy, and returned to the Tianling dynasty, the situation might not be better than now. But if he left now, what would happen to Rongjio? What about father? She wasn't worried that they wouldn't be able to protect her, but she hadn't explained anything yet. If she left with Mu Qinghe now, it would definitely cause a lot of trouble. Who knew when he would be able to come back after this trip? Or would he never come back? Chu Liwei pursed his lips tightly and didn't say anything for a while. Mu Qinghe, it's been so many years. Why don't you have any tender feelings for the fairer sex? A mocking and casual voice was heard. Chu Liwei looked up and saw Jian Fengqi. As he walked over, he smiled and said, Prince Li and Miss Chu just got engaged. They haven't even held their wedding ceremony yet. If you asked her to go back with you now, wouldn't you be breaking up the couple? It's so far away. It'll be difficult for the couple to see each other in the future. Mu Qinghe turned his face and looked at him expressionlessly. Jian Fengqi shrugged his shoulders. Not only did he not stop, but he even walked to Mu Qinghe's side and placed his arm on the latter's shoulder as he smiled charmingly. Anyway, the deadline has passed. The others who should go back have already gone back. It's too late for you to set off now. Why are you nervous for a day or two? In my opinion, why don't you do me a favor, hey? Just talk. Why do you have to hit me? Jian Fengqi quickly broke free from Mu Qinghe's grip. He rubbed his wrist that was almost hit and took a few steps back. Fine, fine, fine. Anyway, it's your business. No one else could do anything about it, right? It'll be fine if I don't say anything. Chu Luiwei was speechless. Jian Fengqi was a head taller than Mu Qinghe. He also looked tall and strong. Why was he so scared? Looking at this scene from the side, it was really strange. However, she quickly focused on some words in Jian Fengqi's sentence. Deadline? Could it be that there was a time limit for Mu Qinghe's trip this time? And why were there other people? It sounded like many people were going out at the same time to complete a mission. Could it be that they were going to find a cultivator with a Daijing Yuan meridian? Chu Luiwei vaguely felt that something was not right. But looking at Mu Qinghe, it was obvious that he would not reveal anything. Mu Qinghe's expression was cold. I have to go back today. Jian Fengqi's expression changed slightly. Because his back was facing Chu Luiwei, Chu Luiwei did not see the change in his expression. But soon, Jian Fengqi's eyes regained their calmness. He crossed his arms, rubbed his chin, and asked tentatively, "Why don't you go back first? Why don't you go back first? Once this matter is settled, this young master will personally escort her back." As soon as he finished speaking, Mu Qinghe immediately said, "No. Why not? Isn't this a very good suggestion?" Jian Fengqi paused and looked meaningfully at Mu Qinghe. "You're busy. You're just wasting time here. Since I'm free, why don't I look after her for a few days? With me around, do you think I'll let her be late?" Chu Luiwei's heart skipped a beat. Late? Was Mu Qinghe looking for her because he was in a hurry to go back? Miss Chu doesn't want to go back now. Isn't it too heartless of you to take her away by force? Jian Fengqi returned to his usual playful tone, but it was clear that he was serious about this proposal. Mu Qinghe's eyes flashed with a hint of contemplation. After a moment, he finally said, 3 days at most. No problem. Jian Fengqi immediately agreed. Then, he suddenly thought of something and turned to look at Chu Luiwei. 3 days should be enough, right? Chu Luiwei gently nodded. Thank you, Vice Admiral Mu, young Master Jian. She had a premonition that this battle would come to a conclusion in 3 days. What she needed to do was to make use of these 3 days to arrange everything properly. Mu Qinghe glanced at Chu Luiwei. With a wave of his wrist, something flew out from his sleeve. Chu Luiwei immediately caught it and looked down. This is my token. Take this, and someone will bring you to me when the time comes. Then, he didn't say anything else. With a thought, a long sword flew out and floated in front of him. With a leap, Mu Qinghe turned around and left on his sword. He was very fast, and he disappeared from Chu Luiwei's sight in the blink of an eye. Chu Luiwei knitted his brows. Young Master Jian, did Vice Admiral Mu go back? Jian Fengqi retracted his gaze, and the emotions in his eyes quickly disappeared. He then changed into his usual carefree smile. He has things to do, so you don't have to worry about him. You, on the other hand, just let me know when you're ready. Chu Luiwei's lips curved up. Thank you, young Master Jian. Jian Fengqi's smile deepened. All right, I heard that Emperor Jiawen seems to be looking for a bronze cauldron these few days. Is that true? You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.